Gentlemen, what were you told was too gay? Homophobia cringe alert. Not me, but a friend was seen as effeminate because he was into sewing. I'm sorry, but the manliest man trait on the planet is practicality, and sewing is one of the most practical skills to have at literally any point in history. I was engaged, and my coworkers knew that I was engaged to a woman. I was at some sort of work thing and started talking to a guy who was obviously gay. We started talking about philosophy, and I thought he was a cool guy. I was just like, hey, if I ever read X book that we're talking about, I'd love to discuss it with you over coffee or something, but I might not read it anytime soon. I'd just graduated college where getting coffee with someone didn't really mean anything, and you just did it if you wanted to have a conversation with them. Apparently, everyone thought I'd asked the guy out. I guess I see where they're coming from, but I just wanted to talk about Wittgenstein with someone who'd read him, should I ever read him as well. Just want to say, I'm sure that guy really appreciated it. It can be pretty common for straight guys to avoid friendships with other guys who happen to be queer. I've actually had several coworkers or friends avoid spending time with me when they find out I have a husband, and while my skin's much thicker now than it used to be, it still stings a bit. I had a girlfriend that started laughing when I crossed my legs because that's hella gay, and it was like the full straight guy spread out T-cross legs. When I was in the 8th grade, I got a solid beatdown for wearing a plain purple t-shirt. Apparently, only gay guys do that. Years later, I found out I was gay for liking other men. Turns out it had nothing to do with my shirt. Who would have thought? I was taking prescription-strength painkillers after surgery. My friend had to come over to check on me. Her boyfriend, now ex, thought it was gay to take painkillers and just told me to be a man. 80s kid here. Anything involving showing emotion is gay. Wearing any clothing that isn't muted is gay. Stating that something is cute is gay. Getting excited over hobbies is gay. Calling your guy friends to talk is gay. Crying's definitely gay. Airing grievances of everyday life is gay. Washing your butthole is gay. And using lotion for any other purpose than whacking the mule is also gay. Shaving anything other than your face and neck? That's about as gay as you get. I played the clarinet. I got called faggonet a lot. In what world is that a clever insult? Oh my god. I don't know. It has some brute force value as a joke. Its very crudeness and ineffective jamming together of two words honestly has a fair bit of laugh value to me. It's like the insult they yell at the people waiting for the bus in the in-betweeners. The humor is more in the insult's very existence rather than the fact that it's effective. Eating bananas, hot dogs, popsicles, string cheese, using a straw, hugging other men, touching feminine hygiene products. This is the one that kills me though. Letting your 3-year-old daughter do your hair, makeup, and nails. And that bit about feminine hygiene products is what gets me. How does buying them for your girlfriend make you gay? In what way would a gay man use feminine hygiene products? They're probably the least likely to have a reason to be buying them when you think about it. Real men are capable of buying their girlfriend products without worrying about their own orientation while doing so. Apparently, going out for Mexican and margaritas with your pal. Nobody said it directly, but the waitress gave us a complimentary dessert for 2 and said happy anniversary. I guess free dessert is free dessert. My best friend and I, both girls, went to senior prom together. We weren't dating anyone at the time, so going as friends was a nice way to have a good time and still nab that couple's ticket discount. We went out for dinner before the dance, and this group of 20-somethings in the corner that we'd never met before kept smiling at us across the room and giving us the thumbs up. When we went to pay for the food, we'd found it had already been paid for? And that was when I realized we'd been mistaken for lesbians, and those smiley folks were probably just trying to be supportive. To be fair, I looked pretty butch, and in retrospect, most straight girls probably wouldn't pair a prom dress with a leather jacket. Anyways, I consider that an absolute win. Some nice strangers got to feel supportive, and we got a free meal out of it. Being mistaken for lesbians was an economic win. Wearing pink or similar colors, although it's definitely my color. As a helicopter pilot, I have a checklist. We all have a checklist. Even though I have the slimmer version, it's still a lot of pages. So I bought some page markers and labeled the important pages like startup, shutdown, refuel, emergencies, whatevs. It's a good idea, right? So I misplaced said checklist in an aircraft I hadn't seen in a while, and I asked some of the more senior guys if they'd seen it, and one of them responded, "Ah, the one with all the little gay page markers?" And all the others laughed. If being convenient is gay, then I guess I'm flamboyant. Eating at a sushi restaurant with another guy equals gay. Having close male friends equals gay. Having close female friends, gay. Evidently, one can't win. At work, I once complimented another man on his outfit. My male coworkers looked at me as if I'd asked if he had undressed photos of himself that I could see. Man, if I got a compliment unprompted like that from a male or female, it would make my whole frickin' month. One time, a girl thought I was gay because I was attentive while her and I were doing the deed. I'm not even joking. Well, that's the gay agenda you've heard so much about. We go around giving women the best fun of their lives in order to make straight men look bad. It's a long-term project. Not exactly a that's gay thing, but a guy talked down to me once for using the word craving because cravings are something only women get. Man, I want to whack one out to some chocolate chip cookies and warm milk right now. Is that better? I said I like it when it rains. And no, I didn't say raining men. Drink any beverage out of a bottle rather than a cup. Or maybe don't stick the bottle in so deep. Putting on sunscreen. Yeah, no joke. Australia had to spend a huge amount of money on a media campaign to persuade people about the need to use sunscreen. It worked, though. When I was in high school, everybody thought I was gay because I wore a scarf to school one day. A, scarves aren't gay. B, it was a gift from my great-grandmother. And C, it was during the winter in Pennsylvania. It was cold. Gay guy here. I enjoy playing piano and used to get told it was gay as F back in middle school. Now when I see the amounts of straight guys getting chicks because they can play an instrument, it makes me laugh a bit. During the pandemic, I was told wearing a mask or PPE in general was gay. Wearing a mask is the least gay thing ever. There's an extra layer of cloth between your mouth and all the other men's crotches. Everyone else is one pants drop away from sausage to mouth exposure. Drinking milk out of a straw makes sucking eggplant feel normal. That's how you turn gay. I'd be willing to bet there was a massive Venn of those that enjoy a male member in their mouth and really dislike plastic straws. Good for you guys. Wearing green on a Thursday, and I have no idea why. The strangest one I've heard was, hey look, 2 guys can't drive around in a convertible with the top down. The other one was, 2 guys can't sit next to each other in a movie theater if it's not crowded. Having a child with my wife is gay. Taking care of my kid and making being a good father and enjoying time with my child as the main goals of my life is somehow gay as well. Changing diapers is apparently gay too. Having good old hetero fun with my wife and dealing with the consequences is also gay. Loving your kids and being a good dad is gay. It doesn't make any sense at all to me. Existence is just gay. Me and a friend of mine used to be like Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels from Dumb and Dumber. Always getting in trouble, bunking class on my scooter, going out to eat, buy groceries, a long ride out of the city because the air is so fresh where people don't live. My friend later told me he heard a rumor that we were both always together, so we were gay. We laughed it off and went to have our Hot Pockets. A friend told me I'm holding my fork in a gay kind of way. Playing the saxophone. Honestly, what in the world? My girlfriend once seriously asked me if I was gay because I said that I liked her body. Safe to say, she had some issues. I broke a guy's jaw in high school. I sent him a get well card while he was in the hospital. He called me gay for sending the card. Wait, did he break his jaw on accident or on purpose? Because sending someone a get well card after intentionally breaking their jaw is a power move. I was told that I was gay because I enjoyed doing it in the butt with a woman. They said that if you did it with a girl in the rear, then you'd do it with a guy too. Well, buddy, you like down under kisses, don't you? Well, if you let a woman do that to you, you'd also let a man do it too. Oh, you kiss your girlfriend too, right? Need I say more? Yep, there it is. Apparently it's gay to do something that's somewhat possible to do with either a man or a woman. That's 32 stories of intense insecurity and counting. I was at a party with my girlfriend and my siblings, minding my own business while drinking sparkling water. My brother-in-law said, "Dude, are you drinking sparkling water? That's so gay." I pointed at my girlfriend. He didn't seem to get my point. I said, "Look, I'm sorry, but you're not my type. And you're with my sister." Several months prior, I'd been at a gay bar ordering a sparkling water. The bartender, smug as frick, asked, "Really? Sparkling water? You must be straight. What is it with me drinking sparkling water and my perceived orientation?" Playing as a female video game character. I played the female character in Assassin's Creed Odyssey because it had a better voice actor. My friend did it with my other gay friend in the bus and said to me, "I'm straight, but one time I did it with that guy and he was getting so into it. It was real funny." Yes, I also frequently have relations with people purely for the comedic value. The time my female friend was wildly drunk and I wouldn't do the deed with her. Both her and my male friends were calling me gay that night. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to Am I the Genius? Brazilian living in the US. Speedo is a gay thing. I don't get it. I'm from the Netherlands. I used to play water polo and people who didn't play it called it gay because we wore Speedos. The whole reason you wear a Speedo during water polo is because if someone grabs it, it doesn't slide off your butt, unlike other kinds of swimwear. It's literally preventing you from being completely undressed in a pool with 13 other men. My husband was told he was gay because he was reading Sunstone, an adult comic series based around a real raunchy lesbian relationship. 2 of my friends from high school died in a car accident a week before graduation. Everyone from the classroom went to the funeral, and some of them were crying a lot. I decided to hug one of them and comfort him, one of my closest friends. And this other frickin' guy, one of the popular cool group who are always doing stupid stuff to get attention, came up to me, touched my back and yelled, "Dude, I didn't know you liked dudes." He was kicked from the funeral and probably lost 90% of his friends. You can tell who was never hugged by their parents just based on their actions alone. Sitting with my legs crossed. My brothers and friends often teased me and couldn't understand how that was possible unless I was gay or had a tiny little Johnson. I just liked it because it was comfortable and it let me relax one leg at a time. So I was about to go on a date with a girl, and my friend, who didn't know he was gay at the time, said that I shouldn't go on a date with her because it was gay. Roller skating was gay all of a sudden. If you had a piercing in your right ear, you were also gay. Basically anything dance-related. My mum told me to stop complaining about my migraine because that's not very straight of you. Fellas, is it gay to feel pain and have an appropriate response to it? When I was little, somebody told me to check my nails, and apparently if you make a half fist and turn your hand so you can look at them, it means you're straight. If you hold your hand up like you're about to give someone a high five, it means you're gay. Kids are weird, man. My adult male coworkers just told me the same thing a few months ago. I don't buy it at all. Later after that, they all kept checking their nails in the right way. Like, seriously, guys? I'll admit that I was the perpetrator in this case. When I was very young, like 8 or 9, I was convinced that eating strawberries was pretty gay. Not from my folks, but just society made me believe that guys shouldn't hug their friends. 20 years later, my 6'3" biker friend is big on hugs now. I have this casual button-down shirt that's like pinkish, coral, salmon, more of a salmon, which is what I said in the story. I've never had anyone say anything bad about it. In fact, I've had like 2 compliments on it over the 8 years I've worn it. But one day, some guy started making fun of me for wearing a pink shirt. And I thought he was joking, so I started joking too and went, "Actually, it's a lovely salmon, possibly with a lemon or honey glaze." And then he called me gay for knowing about salmon as a color and describing cooking in such a way. I don't even know how to cook. I just ordered that at a restaurant once and loved it. Screw him though. One of the girls I dated loved that shirt. I was at a party once and there was this big bodybuilder guy in attendance. He kept loudly joking about how stuff was gay. This is gay, that's totally gay. By the end of the party, everyone had come to the conclusion that this guy was just so deep in the closet. No well-adjusted straight guy is that obsessed with calling stuff gay. I hugged my best friend. We don't do that handshake, hug over one shoulder and pat on the back crap. We frickin' embrace. Some people think that's gay, but we don't care. We enjoy each other. The other day we went whitewater rafting, and at one point we laid on our backs and floated down a calm part of the river while holding hands. I can't argue with that one, it's a bit gay. Still, don't care. Had a good time. Hand-holding between male friends is super common in a lot of cultures across the world. It's basically just in the West where it's considered a purely romantic gesture. Being unable to lift more than a girl. I was like 7 and she was 30. My granddad once told me not to brush my hair because looking pretty's for women and the gays. Screw you, Gramps. I want to look nice, and not like I'm chasing hedgehogs through a frickin' bush, you unwashed heathen. Not a guy, but I used to be in chorus in high school. Guys would comment that the guys in chorus were gay. They weren't, and most of them had amazing voices. So I'd ask them who their favorite band was, and it was always a male-dominated group, and then watch their brains implode when I asked them if the lead singer was gay. Not that I've been told not to do it, but I know a guy who refuses to go south on his girlfriend because he says it's gay. He believes that eating that particular cat is an act of submission, and that only gay men are submissive. This is utterly stupid. Also, he's had the same girlfriend for over a decade on and off. They're both smackheads, though, and incredibly codependent. Probably the 2 most dysfunctional people I've ever met. Told this guy I liked his wristwatch and he completely flipped out, calling me gay. Then he goes storming out of the bathroom without even flushing his urinal. Okay, this one wins, or loses for me I guess so far. Looks like most of these people are equally stupid or ignorant, but just deciding that even the barest hint of positivity or affirmation of any kind is gay, and that the very presence of homosexuality in the same space you're in is worth being that angry about, it's just such a double whammy of needless anger and confusion. It's a 101 masterclass on how to look insecure. If an alcoholic drink doesn't taste really bitter or doesn't burn your throat, apparently it's male organ in a glass. Okay, so some people wrote in to say, if I have to be gay to drink margaritas, then I'll be gay. My personal strategy has been to transition genders, so I'm technically not a straight man anymore, answering this question. Now I'm a gay trans woman, and apparently it's really straight of me to drink the same frickin' drinks. Make up your damn minds, people. A buddy of mine once complained that nobody looked manly drinking from a straw. Cry. I used to cry a lot as a child, and I'd get bullied for it. The adults in my life all agreed that crying made me weak, but one in particular, the secretary at my elementary school, thought it also made me seem gay and feminine and told me that was why I was being bullied. The reality is that I was probably depressed from having recently moved across the country from my family and often found myself lonely, so I couldn't handle the smallest amount of rejection or teasing from others. Please don't tell children not to cry. Talk to them about their feelings so that the source of their sadness can be tackled, not the symptom. I still struggle with processing basic emotions because I spent so much time repressing them over stupid reasons like this. Disclosure, I'm not straight, but bi, but large parts of my family don't know that. Anyway, this was a few years ago. I was helping my dad repair a hay baler, and I was standing around looking at my dad under the machine greasing something. I had my hands on my hips. My uncle pulls up in his truck and rolls down the window and shouts to me, "Hey, take your hands off your hips, it makes you look queer." My dad gets out from under the baler and starts yelling back at my uncle. "I'd rather have a queer helping me than a lazy, useless son of a bee like you." My uncle shut up and drove off. You know, reading all the things men can't do while straight, I think I'd rather be gay. It sounds like they have a hell of a lot more fun. I have a friend who's bi, and she married a man. Before her wedding, her mum reminded her that some of her family were Jehovah's Witnesses and less tolerant of anything queer, and she asked her not to act gay. I'm not sure how you can act gay at your wedding when you're marrying someone of the opposite gender, but in the end her maid of honor was a lesbian, and my husband and I, both men, came so that her crappy, bigoted aunts had to put up with our existence anyway. I'm not a man, but I once mentioned to my then-boyfriend that I needed to find a gynecologist in the area, and he responded with, "I know I have no say in who you see, but I'd really prefer you pick a male gynecologist because they are all gay for obvious reasons." I'm still trying to understand how looking at women's bits all day makes you gay. I think of that conversation every time I think of the male OB-GYN who delivered my daughter that's extremely proud of his beautiful wife and 4 kids. I think it would blow my ex's mind. When I was young, a couple of my friends refused to be seen with me if I wore a red t-shirt because wearing red was gay. Went to cheer camp. I was the mascot at my school and thought it would be awesome to be a straight guy where all the girls were barely clothed. I pointed this out to people and they had to seriously reconsider what they thought was gay. Also, when I used to look at adult magazines, apparently wanting the guy to be younger and somewhat attractive was gay. Being a theatre tech was kind of gay, but only if it was musicals. Getting excited about your hobbies was gay. This is the one that upset me the most. I didn't think it was gay, I just lost interest because of all the stupid comments. It's not till now that I'm almost 30 that I finally love having some great hobbies again. Washing my butthole. A friend of mine once said, "Everyone knows that's gay. You can miss me with that. Apparently you're only allowed to wash your cheeks and let suds run down the crack. Any direct contact with your own hole and you'll catch the gay." Work at Victoria's Secret for a summer. I was trying to speed up the girlfriend getting process and decided to work in a female-rich environment, but apparently that was gay. Did you at least get a girlfriend? I think most of them thought I was gay, so no. Have girls as friends in primary school. Many of my male friends told me that was gay. Now who's laughing when I'm the only guy invited to girls' slumber parties? And I'm bisexual. I mean, being bisexual is at least a little gay. Kissing my homie goodnight. My cousin described his shoes as comfy. My dad suspected him of being gay for several years afterwards. I had a guy tell me that tickling my pickle was gay. As he put it, "You're cranking off a bloke, even if that bloke is you." I responded that it was even worse, as it's a man who's part of your immediate family. and he thought that was crazy talk.
Parents of Reddit, what's the funniest reason you've been called into school to collect your child? I was called to collect my son when he was in first grade because, quote, he was being disrespectful to his classmates. They wouldn't explain. My son told me that Jeffrey pantsed him, and that makes no sense. About an hour later, the light bulb went on. You didn't wear underwear today, did you? Nope. When I was in middle school, some poor guy got pantsed right in front of me, a girl who shared many of his classes. Normally, it'd be no big deal. Someone got pantsed in my school on at least a weekly basis. No, the really awkward part was I was kind of crouched down because I had a bottom locker and he was standing up with the top locker next to mine. Not above, but I guess on a diagonal. His pantser shouted right as he pulled, so of course I looked up at the shout because it startled me. And well, the pantsed individual's boxers had been pulled down along with his pants, so right in front of my eyes was a dingaling. It was the first dingaling I'd ever seen in person, well outside of seeing like baby cousins get changed and stuff, and considering we were 11, I was presumably the first girl, outside of his close family when he was little, to see his dingaling. It was just for a split second because obviously the guy pulled his pants back up with lightning reflexes. I've never seen someone go so red in the face. We both stood there in shock for a couple of seconds as the hallway cleared and began walking in class. We shared the next class. Oh no, that's even more awkward. The whole time he was stammering out apologies and I kept telling him it wasn't his fault. It's not like he'd pulled his own pants down. After class, other students asked me if I'd seen it, and I lied profusely. What are you talking about? He was wearing underwear. How would I see anything? Oh, well, in the back they came down. The whole hallway could see his butt. Oh my god, well, they didn't come down in the front. The rest of the year, this guy who was a practical stranger was pretty nice to me. Not like flirty nice, but I think he figured out that I lied, so I felt he owed me one. I was called in because the elementary school was going on a field trip that my son forgot to give me the permission slip for. He decided to give forgery a whirl. This was in first grade, so the handwriting was awful. He also signed my name, Mom. I got a phone call earlier this year from the school nurse, saying she was concerned because my son had passed out while on the lunch line. I went to pick him up and he seemed a little dazed, but okay. My kid couldn't remember anything about what happened beforehand, so I made an appointment with his pediatrician for an hour later. Right as we're getting to leave, he sheepishly said, Mom, I just remembered that right before I passed out, we were playing a game to see who could turn their face the reddest. So, my kid had me thinking he had a brain tumor, but no, he just held his breath until he passed out, and not a single other kid thought they should mention that to the teacher. Embarrassed to admit, but I've done this before. I was getting ready for school in the morning and decided out of the blue to do this. Promptly passed out and cracked my head on the dresser on the way down. I come to almost immediately and just sat there on the floor confused as to what happened. I already had this huge lump forming on my head and a killer headache, but I didn't want to tell my dad because I didn't want him to be mad. So I went to school and was miserable all day. When I got home, I finally told my sister. She took one look and ran to tell Mom. I had a goose egg-sized lump on my head. All said and done, I had 2 MRIs and a sleep test. Don't know the proper name. Everything turned out fine in the end. I never admitted I'd passed out because I held my breath too long. In my senior year of high school, I was nearly not allowed to graduate, and my family was called because I forged my own name by writing in the Guardian section of a permission slip. I was 18. My kid got in huge trouble in kindergarten. A girl told the teacher he said the S word. He lost recess, they called me, it was a big deal. I went to pick him up and said, "So what's the S word?" And he stared at his shoes and whispered, "Sexy." Yeah, confirmed by the little tattletale. All of this was caused by sexy. Funniest one I've ever heard. My kid surprisingly well behaved at school. Was a parent having to come get their kid after they were caught selling imaginary friends to the younger students for $1 apiece. I made the mistake of telling my stepdaughter about the professor I had in college that we never knew read our papers, so it turned into a class game to fit ridiculous sentences and bad jokes into the middle of them to see if we'd ever get caught. She apparently decided that was an amazing thing to do, and I got called for a phone conference because she turned in a history paper that was chock full of awful puns that were not appreciated. My mother was called to pick me and my twin sister up because we were turning blue. I think it was in 4th grade. We felt fine though. It was only after she arrived that we all remembered she had put brand new blue flannel sheets on our bed the night before. Apparently, she hadn't washed them first. My little brother liked cheese and mustard sandwiches, so my mom made him cheese and mustard sandwiches for lunch. When the teacher asked why he didn't have any meat on his sandwich, he said either "we can't afford meat" or "my mom doesn't let me," or something like that. Whatever he said was enough to send CPS over to the house. Another time, he came to school saying that his mom loved Coke, that his mom said she's addicted to Coke. CPS was called again. They lived in a different area this time. Coca-Cola. My mom couldn't go a day without a Coke. So she joked that she was addicted to coke. I do see the irony that she was actually addicted to a drug, just not the one CPS was worried about. I got a call that my son was sick and that I had to come pick him up. He was completely fine that morning. I asked the nurse, he really can't go back to class? And she said, he says he's really sick. Fine. I picked him up and on the walk home I asked what was up. He said he had to fart really badly and didn't want to do it in class. I laughed and said okay. 2 days later, I get another call to pick him up. So I got him and it was for the same reason. I told him that it was funny once, but that from now on, if he needed to fart in class, he should go to the bathroom. Daycare. Had to talk to the director because my son, 3 or 4, told another kid I'm gonna F you up. Turns out he was singing Bruno Mars' Uptown Funk You Up. My child's first grade teacher was upset that he had accidentally smooshed a butterfly on the playground at recess. When I got there, my child was also missing his glasses. She hadn't noticed this. My youngest had a slight speech impediment when he was at nursery. He would replace his S's with F's to approximate the sound. I had to have a chat with the head at pickup time because I'd unthinkingly used the phrase, "So long, suckers," when pulling away from some traffic lights the day before, and he liked the sound of it so much he used it himself. My professor cited my mom because she said I was writing too slow and turned my test in right as the bell rang. My mom had to leave work early to hear about her child writing slow. The reason I was writing slow was because on my last test, I was docked points for handwriting. So this time, I made sure I had the purtiest, most fanciest handwriting that teacher had ever seen. After that, the teacher stopped docking me points due to handwriting. As somebody with notoriously crappy handwriting, I felt this post. That was in elementary school, early years. The principal called us and looked at us with a stern look of disapproval while telling us our son was using bad language. I then proceeded to explain to her that my wife and I only spoke French at home and we did not have television. The only English our son had ever heard was at school, so I asked her what she was going to do about it. It was one of the shortest conversations I ever had with that principal. About the principal, as I recall, she suddenly remembered she had to do something urgently and the meeting was over before I could say anything else. Literally, pardon my French. I was the kid and I was in 3rd grade. I climbed on a tree, not even that high, and then I wanted to climb down. A teacher who hated me saw me and told me to stay there and not to move. I told her it's no problem for me to come down. She insisted I stayed there and turned around to call the fire brigade to get me down. I had enough and climbed down anyway, and then she called my mom because it was my fault the fire brigade was called for no reason. I was in an early morning college class, and when I got out, I realized I had missed calls, texts, and emails from my daughter's preschool. A voicemail said she had been throwing up and to please hurry and come get her. When I got to the school, the receptionist showed me to a room where my daughter was sat with the trash can on her lap. She told me my daughter kept announcing she was throwing up and then would cough into the trash can. She had no fever and was otherwise cheerful and talkative. I signed her out, got her outside, and into my car where she jumped forward and kissed my cheek and told me she missed me and where would I like to go for lunch. That kid busted herself out of preschool to finagle a lunch date with me. It worked. Aww. I was the child in 6th grade. I was 12. I was in my emo phase and was wearing a lot of black eyeshadow from Claire's. I guess I wasn't so good at my makeup yet because they called my mom into the office to discuss my injuries and who was, in quotes, hurting me. I had super bad allergies as a child to the point where I had awful dark circles under my eyes that legitimately looked like bruises. I had the principal and my teacher asking if everything was okay at home and pointed to my eyes. I let them know about my allergies and they skeptically accepted the answer. 2 weeks later, I stepped in a large hole in the ground by accident and fell flat on my face, giving me an actual black eye. Trying to explain to the principal, my teacher, and the school counselor that I actually fell was no easy task. My son went to a private Catholic school from 1st grade through 8th grade. I had a nun call me one day because my son and a friend were having a peeing for distance contest in the bathroom. And then another day I was called because my son was looking to see if the dictionary had the word dingaling in it. Both incidents were in the 3rd grade. When I was in 7th grade, I was an office runner. Basically, if your reading and writing skills were above a certain level, they let you skip reading class and just work in the office, getting kids whose parents had come for them, delivering messages, that sort of thing. Anyway, the kid next to me just wouldn't shut the heck up. He kept rattling on and on and on, and I had enough of it. I had a monster fart brewing, so I cocked my leg, locked eyes with him, told him to shut his mouth, and farted on him. Or, at least, that was the plan. Instead, I cocked my leg, locked eyes with him, told him to shut his mouth, and completely cracked my pants in the most glorious fashion. This wasn't a little nugget. This was a full pants load of chocolate pudding that ran down my leg and made a little puddle on the floor. Everything in the office goes dead silent, and there's no mistaking what's just happened. The kid just stared at me with absolute horror in his eyes. Without looking away from him, I raised my hand and said, "Miss Office Lady's name, I don't remember. I think I need to call my mom." I went home, took a bath, threw the pants away, and came back the next day. The kid was seated on the opposite side of the room from me, and I never had a problem with him again. He feared and respected me from then on. Anybody want dessert? My dad got sent to the principal's office for telling his 6th grade teacher she was pronouncing the state capital of South Dakota, Pierre, wrong. She kept saying Pierre, 2 syllables like the French name, and he said it was Pierre, 1 syllable, like what you fish off of. He was sent off for not respecting a teacher's authority. My grandma had to drive to school to talk to the teacher and principal and says, "Did you ask why he says it's Pierre? Because if you did, you'd find out that both his father and I are from South Dakota. He visits his grandparents and aunts and uncles in South Dakota every summer. He knows plenty of people from South Dakota who all say Pierre. Do you know anyone from South Dakota? No? Well, take it from a South Dakotan. It's Pierre. We're not fancy French people, and stop wasting my time." Okay, but to be honest, I didn't know it was Pierre either. I kept saying Pierre all my life, so I'm sorry if there's anybody out there who was offended by my ignorance as a young child. So yeah, let's just keep going. We don't have to talk about it. My son, 14, 8th grade, during class change, walked into the boys' bathroom, put his hands over his head, and while thrusting his hips in a humping motion, told all the other boys in the room to "Protect your buttholes, gentlemen, here I come." The funniest part about it all, that exact same description was jotted down on the write-up slip. Even the principal couldn't stop laughing. My daughter hid inside of a toy box for hours in preschool, and the teachers couldn't find her. She's gonna be my wild child. When I was in 2nd grade, I had a shirt that we got as a hand-down from a friend of my mom's with Braille on the front. Apparently, no one ever took the time to figure out what it said, but there was a translator/key on the sleeve, so I sat down and translated the word on the front, 1 letter at a time while in class. F-U-C-K-O-F-F. "Oh my," I said. I knew this was a bad word, so I told my teacher and apologized. I wasn't in trouble, but my parents were called and asked to come bring in a new shirt while I waited in the office. My principal thought it was hilarious, apparently. We had a classmate who was partially blind. I'm unsure if she had vision enough to see my shirt, but she did know Braille. I believe that is one of the reasons I had to wait in the office, though. Not a parent, but as a kid, when I got Pokemon Yellow, I was so gosh darn into it that when we went out for lunch one day at school, I got inside this huge bush that was practically hollow inside. It was among a load of other large bushes and trees at the side of the school field, and rarely ever was entered by students because we weren't really allowed. So I sat there for hours playing Pokemon, and when I came out it was 3 p.m. School closed at 3:30. I had been in there since 12:30, and my mother was at the school and was freaking out because she thought they let me leave the school alone. I got called on my work cell several times right out of college to come to a local high school because my 14-year-old son was in trouble. I don't have a son, and if I had a son, it would be very impressive if he was 14 years old then because I would have had to conceive him when I was 9. I told them that. They kept calling. Finally, I showed up at the high school to prove that I, a 23-year-old white guy, was not the father of the 14-year-old Indian boy. The assistant principal was like, "Oh, right." My mom told me that when my brother was in grade school, she got the call to pick him up for a day's suspension. Turned out during lunch, he opened his lunchbox and pulled out a can of Foster's. It was empty and it was meant to be a joke, but the school didn't see it that way. He was 9 and right at the start of a decade-long mission to raise heck. I got a call to pick up my daughter in kindergarten because she had no underwear. She had them on when I put her on the bus, so I have no idea what happened. Totally embarrassing. Oh my. I have 4 kids, all adults now, who were pretty high-spirited back in the day. My oldest son, however, wins the prize from an incident in 6th grade. I got a call one afternoon that he had been sent to the principal's office. Nothing new there, and I needed to come get him at once. Uh-oh. He had mooned the 2nd graders. All of them. And their teachers. Not me, but a classmate of a coworker sent everyone home many years ago. He nicked a decent bit of elemental potassium from the chemistry lab and dropped it down the sewer access pipe outside the school. This was not good for the school's plumbing. City had to dig up the sidewalk to repair things. For those not aware, here's a quick chemistry lesson. Potassium plus water equals violent boom. Nobody should be throwing any sort of potassium or sodium down a sewer pipe because that will cause severe problems. Not me, but my sister. She got a call from her son's very Catholic school that he needed to be picked up. She gets to the school and the principal said that he had to go home for the day because he peed on the tree outside at recess. He really laid into her about how they had to bleach the tree. Seriously, they poured bleach on the tree because a little kid peed on it. And it was terrible, and how she shouldn't be teaching her son these things. My sister looked him straight in the eye and asked, "Do you really think I have the right plumbing to have taught him that? Yell at my husband when he comes in next time." Me, when I was a kid, we moved from Middle America to the West Coast. I had extra R sounds in my words. They called my mom about my speech impediment. After talking to my mom, they understood that it was not a speech impediment, but my birth sound language. It is Washington, not Washington. It's funny now, but wasn't at the time. One day, I was called to pick up my daughter from school. I asked why and was vaguely told she had been caught cheating, was being disrespectful to the teacher, and had destroyed government property. Holy crap, I thought. What had she done? My mind instantly went through scenarios in which she had cheated on a test, got caught, that my sweet little 7-year-old had cursed the teacher while throwing something out the window. I go to the school, found my scared daughter in the principal's office looking totally dejected, and asked for an explanation. I discovered the cheating was that she had giggled while playing a game where someone was it, and the other half of the classroom had to guess who it was. The disrespecting teacher was from her crossing her arms when she was being told how she wrecked the game. The best was the explanation for destroying government property. During story time, she was picking at loose carpet threads. I was extremely angry with my daughter the whole drive from work, and after this load of WTF, it instantly transferred to anger with the school. You called me here because she giggled, crossed her arms, and picked at old nasty carpet? I was hot and took my daughter home, letting her know I was a bit upset with her, but let her know that there would be no more punishment. She'd been through enough. We went home and watched cartoons, and I made her favorite grilled cheese and tomato soup for lunch. I received a call from the vice president of my daughter's school one day while I was at work. I could tell the VP was holding back her laughter, but she tried to remain professional. "Hello. Your daughter acted out in class today. The children were switching from coloring to reading at the carpet. She threw her crayons down and pointedly said to the teacher, 'Are you freaking kidding me?' My knee-jerk reaction was, 'Dang it, are you freaking kidding me?' It's clear where she learned this from. My second thought was, dang, I have a kid in junior kindergarten that knows how to use that phrase in a correct form. The following year, the VP is no longer at the school. We attend similar social groups and talk often. She loves to tell me that making that phone call was one of the funniest calls she has had to make as an educator. My dad was called into the school when I was in grade 1. Apparently, I've been caught with my hand in a girl's pants and hers in mine while in class. Okay, but I feel like we're missing context here. By apparently, I can think of 2 options. 1, you were caught but didn't know that you had done anything wrong until your dad came to pick you up. Or 2, you were somehow pegged as doing something you didn't actually do, which, given most American school systems, I could easily believe. But where's the evidence, OP? Nephew was staying with me for 2 months. I showed him Dexter's Laboratory for the first time. Next day, they called me to pick him up because he would only say omelette de fromage to any interaction. I too was the child. I peed on my friend in 5th grade. Another pee one? What's going on here? We were competing in who could pee the furthest back from the urinal when a buddy of mine decided to run underneath it for laps. Hand slipped, peed down his back. Sent to the principal's. My 4-year-old's teacher told me he had repeatedly called her a butthole. She had taken something away from him and said, "That's all." Every time she came near him, he said, "That's all" to her. Knowing him, he probably used the same tone of voice she had used, and she was a nasty piece of work. In case you don't get it, say "that's all" to yourself in increasingly varying tones, and you'll see why he got in trouble. Unicorn Club. So my daughter was in 5th grade. She was proving to be pretty responsible, so she was allowed to have a cell phone, because she was home about an hour before I was on weekdays, and an Instagram account that I heavily monitored. We never had any issues, still haven't, and now she's in high school. Well, I get a call from her school's principal one day. He tells me 2 boys were fistfighting in the lunchroom. I asked what that had to do with my daughter. Well, apparently, my child had used an Instagram account to start what was essentially a cult called Unicorn Club. Unicorns were obviously the worshipped deity, with goats being the devil figure to the unicorn gods. These 2 boys got into a fistfight over whether unicorns or goats were better. I had to pick her up to prevent further disputes and disband Unicorn Club. TLDR, my 10-year-old daughter created a small cult around unicorn worship. Guys, leave a comment right now. Unicorns or goats? My child with mild tree nut allergy went to the nurse since she ate a mystery food and her throat felt weird. She has been evaluated and her allergy does not warrant an EpiPen. I rush over because she usually gets hysterical and would need Benadryl, which the school can't administer. I arrive. She's all smiles. She feels better now after some water. The mystery food? Fuego Takis. She was 6 when this happened. The one that made me laugh and shake my head was when my son was in the 2nd grade. He decided that instead of helping one of his fellow classmates with his work, that he'll just do his work for him. When I asked him why, his answer really tickled me. "Mom, so our table will be the first table to get snacks." People who ran into the weird kid from school years later, how did he or she turn out? My friend's dad told him about the weird classmate he had. Nobody really took him seriously. When they were in their last grades, that kid decided that right after school, he'll be growing fun guy instead of studying. Everyone laughed at him. And guess what? Right now, he owns probably the largest organic farm business both in the country and most likely in the whole region. Sounds like a pretty fun guy. We had a kid that would do weird stuff in front of other kids for attention. Climb into bins, eat old food out of the bins, let people throw yogurt over him, dive into bushes, that sort of thing. Otherwise, he seemed mostly harmless. Ended up in prison for pouring a kettle of boiling water over a guy and a girl who he fancied. They were at a house party, he saw her talking to a guy, so he went to the kitchen, boiled the kettle, then calmly walked up to them and poured it over their heads. I'm not sure he had ever even spoken to her, but he was seemingly jealous that she was talking to another guy. Then, after he was released from prison for that, he took his mother's car on a joyride with two of his mates, crashed into a car driven by an elderly couple, then ran off, leaving his two mates dead and the elderly couple badly injured. I think he's still in prison for that. Not quite as bad, but we had another weird kid who would talk to no one and would spend all day drawing graffiti in a sketchbook, which he guarded with his life. Not good graffiti, he just kept drawing his tag in different fonts. I think it was Azpect, or some other badly spelt word. If he spoke, it was usually just to tell people how great he thought Banksy was. He ended up spraying his tag all over our small and otherwise graffiti-free English town, and was immediately arrested after his old teachers recognized it. I think the sketchbook was used as evidence. He was then arrested a second time for spraying his tag on the side of the courthouse in front of half a dozen CCTV cameras. I bumped into him a year or so back, and now he works for a charity which runs a kids club in the next town over. He teaches kids how to skate and BMX, as well as running street art classes where they legally decorate the skate park with graffiti. I wouldn't say I ran into him, but I occasionally drive past the penny kid walking around slumped in a leather jacket and greasy hair on a hot summer day. I really have no idea what he's doing with his life, but he still seems pretty weird. Back in high school, he was always collecting change that he'd find on the ground, and I found out later he actually saved up $500 or so and donated it to charity. I thought a lot differently about him once I found out. Didn't run into him, but randomly saw a TED Talk he gave on YouTube. He's a physicist now, and has been lobbying the government to increase funding for science education in order to ensure future generations can continue the fight against climate change. He's a way better person than I became. One kid like that died in a car accident senior year. Everyone then pretended they were his best friend and that they were so sad, etc., etc., etc. These people basically tortured this kid. Their reactions were disgustingly fake. I never realized how many phony monsters I knew until that happened. Luckily, I never had to see those people again soon after. She was actually doing really well. I almost didn't recognize her because she looked so much different. She joined the military, so was cleaned up, in better shape, etc., and seemed like she was happy. Sadly, she died in a car accident a year or so later. Girl in high school used to be really to herself, super into anime, just assumed she was shy, so I'd make a point to have small chats with her every day, until one day she said her pillow wasn't screwing her right. Apparently, her pillow had conscience, and she used it to pleasure herself. Graduated a few months later. Fast forward to about 3 months ago. I'm making coffee at a cafe when said girl walks up to me. She's super polite and bubbly, but as I ask how her day is going, she tells me that the demon that forced himself upon her was actually her guardian angel and she needed him around or something. Haven't seen her since. In case somebody needed to be told today, don't stick it in crazy. Ran into the kid who was effectively the school bully at the bank one day. He wasn't a physical bully, but made fun of everyone and was just mean in general. He walks up to me holding his daughter and gave me a classic white guy, well gosh darn it, how the heck are ya? And this is gonna sound crazy, but he legit became the nicest guy in the world. Extremely well adjusted, great family, great career. He invited me to go out to the driving range the following Sunday, and for whatever reason, I was inclined to go. Wound up hitting golf balls and smoking J's with him for most of the day and had a heart-to-heart. Turns out, he was terribly abused his entire life, and his father punished him by forcing him to stay awake all night. He was petrified to go home, so he did whatever he could to get detention. Explains a lot. Never judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. There was a weird kid in my middle school who would eat hand sanitizer, cut his fingers, and write 666 on the classroom walls with his blood, and other creepy things. Apparently, he had a crush on me, and asked me to the 8th grade prom, but I declined. Fast forward to the last day of middle school. I received a message from him on Facebook saying he had a huge crush on me, and that he would off himself if I didn't feel the same. I told him that despite what he had just sent me, I wasn't interested. A few months later, we start high school, but since there's 4 high schools in my area, a lot of us were scattered around, and we ended up going to different schools. I never saw him again, but through Facebook, I saw that he started a relationship with a girl that also attended her middle school. He looked really happy, and honestly, I was happy for him. He seemed to have grown out of that weird middle school stage and genuinely seemed like a great guy. Around 2 years later, I was a junior in high school. I go to a local supermarket and just mind my business. The next day, I receive a message from him on Facebook saying he was working at the supermarket and happened to see me. I messaged him back and apologized for not seeing him and saying hi. He then proceeded to apologize for all of the weird middle school stuff and that message he had sent me on the last day of 8th grade. I told him all was fine and we left it at that. Now, by the looks of his Facebook, he's a workout fanatic and his body has changed a lot. He also seems to be going to college and spends a lot of time with his family. I'm glad he's doing fine. Calmed down significantly and is happily married now. He acted out in school because he was being abused by his foster parents at home. Nobody knew at the time. I don't know, he just keeps making crappy edits of Drew Pickles from the Rugrats going places around town and talking in a text-to-speech voice. That's hyper-specific. There was this kid in junior high that was really quiet and had no friends at the time. One day, my English teacher pulls me out of the classroom and asks me to befriend him because he didn't have friends. So I did, and we became friends. We went to different high schools, so kinda lost connection. He would text me every now and then. He found me on Facebook when he was working on his engineering degree. He is now married and works for SpaceX as an engineer. He renamed himself Green Dragon of the West. He's a network engineer, so okay, I guess. Voice actors note, a lot of these stories are about the weird kid committing heinous crimes that I cannot talk about on YouTube, so apologies if some of these stories turn up a little short. I saw her at a con I was working, where she came up to my guest and was telling him about her book that she hadn't started writing, but was due the next day and still had 10,000 words left to write. She also kept looking at her phone and dramatically sighing and saying things about how she wished her publisher would leave her alone. So, still making up things to try and make herself look better. I'm doing fine and have not murdered anyone. I was the weird kid. Mom was never really around, no father figure. We lived in a half-renovated house with animal feces through it because my mom kept her dogs indoors 24/7. We were also extremely broke. Like, Mom would go hungry to feed my sister and I. My mother, on reflection, was mentally unwell due to the depression of losing her mom 2 years prior. She still hasn't recovered to this day. I realized years later my clothes probably smell like animal feces all the time. I had very few friends in high school. I ended up getting into drugs at 13 to escape from my crappy life, plus I had no boundaries or restrictions from my parental figures. I also lived on my PlayStation and Game Boy due to not having any friends to actually spend time with, making me socially inept. Both my sister and I were eventually uplifted by welfare services, and I ended up in a boys' home for 3 years, where I finally got the boundaries and basic care I needed. I had a great social worker who worked hard to set me up with a positive future despite my circumstances. I slowly gained social skills and realized I could have a normal life. After leaving school, I realized I had a strong work ethic that led me to work up to holding management positions in basically every business I've worked in since my early 20s. It also got me through university doing a Bachelor of Social Work. Now, I'm a social worker, supporting young adults to change the direction of their lives and to have a life they could be proud of. I've just been promoted to manage the service I work for and to grow the service so it could be extended to other districts. I guess I've done all right for myself when I look at where I've come from. I'm also happily married with 3 amazing kids, whom I make my life mission to have a better upbringing than the one I experienced. For those who are asking about my mom and my sister became a semi-pro athlete and also graduated uni. She's in a long-term relationship and has a job that enables her to train for her sporting discipline. Mom's doing okay. She's still not mentally there, but she is better than she was, and she does try most days. She loves the grandkids and spoils them every time she sees them. She's got a job now and has held it down for a few months. Her decision-making is still poor sometimes, but my sister and I keep an eye on her and challenge her decisions when they're not helpful to her quality of life. He's in prison for owning, my lord. Like I said before, can't mention that on YouTube. It's CP, by the way. He was still wearing the same hoodie that he had every single day in high school, 5 years after graduation. I don't know what I'd expected, but it blew my mind. She moved to New York City and was one of the stars of a Broadway musical. See? The weird kid in school can have a successful acting career. Wait a minute, I'm pretty sure I was the weird kid. But runner-up was a very nice but shy girl who immigrated from China and loved computers, but was incredibly meek. A conversation was like prying teeth, would only make strange noises in class, etc. And frankly, in hindsight, what little she said at the time makes me realize now she was in an emotionally abusive household. Example, she had some small role in a school play in middle school. I was happy for her when I saw that her mom came, as she said she doubted her mom would come. I asked afterwards, and she said her mom said she looked like a sack of dog bones on the stage during her part. I legit did not know what to say when she said stuff like that because I was a kid myself. Fortunately, I can say I know how she turned out, and it's a happy ending. We went to the same college, and she was originally signed up for pre-med because even though this gal was a computer whiz, her mom insisted she had to be a doctor. Within a year, though, she rebelled against everything and became a computer science major, the horror, and became a known source of advice for other kids of Asian descent in particular, seeking to stand up to their parents' expectations. She's now a test engineer working for a household name computing company and posts pictures of international travel and various geeky hobbies. So, I guess she was great once she could find herself, and most of the weirdness was imposed upon her. People are asking how I was weird. Unfortunately, while astronomy is a cool thing to be into as an adult, it is not when you're at an all-girls high school. This was combined with how honestly I didn't know how to interact with a lot of the other kids. I wasn't shy, but had real trouble making friends. Was very ostracized in elementary school too, like kid who sat alone at lunch for years, and didn't figure it out until college. I've told this before, but my dad told me about a kid he went to high school with who used to sit in the back of the class mumbling and giggling to himself all the time. Occasionally, he'd pick his nose and eat the results. Despite this, my dad said, he was apparently really smart and got all A's. He told me the guy's name, and since it was pretty distinctive, I looked him up online. He was a federal appeals court judge. Wow, my dad has a similar high school story. I promise that my recollection of this is true, but my father may have embellished some bits, though I don't see why he would. Back when my father was in high school, he had several classes with the weird kid/outcast. Always kept to himself and had trouble making friends because he wasn't engaging in conversations like most people are. Not that he wouldn't socialize, but rather, he only socialized when necessary, and to him, it was a means to an end. For context, the story was told like a decade ago. And that kid was Tom Cruise. I did verify, they indeed went to the same high school together, and were in the same year. So, take from that what you will. It's been 7 years and he still messages me on Facebook once a week. I haven't spoken to him or replied in 7 years, and he sends me paragraphs of text. I see it as a dang game now. Freaking 7 years. What the heck, Mark? It's only a couple years out of high school at this point, but one of my good friends is high-functioning autistic, and thus was considered very weird in high school. He's found a job stocking the refrigerators at a local supermarket and is enjoying that from what he tells me. He's taking classes on and off at a local university, but doesn't know what he wants to go into. He's also getting into writing fanfiction and is continuing his passion for Lego. On a side note, his creations in Lego are super impressive, especially considering his limited resources. He discovered that he was better at interacting with computers than with people and became a software engineer. Ran into him at Costco, wrapping up a PhD at 25. Not bad at all. There was a girl at my school who I'll call Melanie. Melanie was easily the most socially awkward/unaware girl I've ever met. Like, pleasuring herself at school awkward. Picking her nose and eating it publicly awkward. By the end of high school, she had figured out how not to do these insane things that made people stare and laugh at her, but needless to say, she had a rough go. But she was also one of those people who was a really nice, genuine person. I moved away after college and didn't have Facebook until at least 10 years after graduation, so I had no idea what most of my classmates were doing. Maybe 5 years ago, I spotted her and friended her. She ended up marrying this guy who went to our school and was maybe 3 years older than us. I knew him from work, and he asked me out at one point. He was also really, really nice, but super nerdy and socially awkward. I didn't think about it at the time, but when I saw she married him, I was like, oh my god, they're perfect for each other. They moved to a state that has a bunch of mountains and they don't have any children, so they're always posting all these amazing hiking and rock climbing adventures they're doing together. They go to all kinds of festivals together. Renaissance, I think, Star Trek, horror, etc. They look super happy, and I talked to her grandma last year, who told me they're as happy as clams. I'm just so happy for her. The type of weird that you wanted to have as a friend rather than not. I have a few too many stories with this kid in middle/high school. He was a kleptomaniac, had illegal, exotic, and dangerous pets, obsession with knives and weapons, had no regard for normal social standards and cues. Despite him being an innately skilled entrepreneur, he was a general menace to society. I went off to college and later learned his home was raided by ATF. His father had been manufacturing automatic weapons for the Latin kings, and they charged him on an unregistered gun and pot/shroom chocolates found in his room. Last I heard of him after he got out of prison was on a flyer for a community board advertising basic around the house labor, with his head superimposed on a cartoon Superman. I met him at a bus stop, and I only managed to say, hey, how are you? What are you doing nowadays? He responded, I'm a cat, meow, meow, and ran away across the road, where he almost got hit by a car in the process. I didn't see him come back to take a bus. I suppose he turned into a furry or something? He is so much happier than he was in high school, where people would physically assault him, harass him, and mock him. He has autism and is obsessed with Batman and sharks. The last time I saw him was 2 years ago when I was walking around my friend's college, and he was delighted to see me, and even remembered my name where we caught up. And he told me all about how he had been on vacation and got to go out on a boat and see sharks. I mean, Batman and sharks are both pretty freaking rad. Still weird. Not as weird as in high school when he invited me over to have frozen pizzas and watch Animal Planet, the original Netflix and chill. He asked every single day in science class, without fail. Then he wiped his bugs on the front of my desk. We had a kid who thought he was a ninja. He even wore the shoes with the split toes. Ended up getting busted talking 12-year-old girls online into favors at a local park. While awaiting trial, was busted by internet vigilantes posing as underage girls going after multiple faked accounts. His trial was on the news quite a bit. About 10 years later, there was an expose on conditions at a prison, and he was interviewed working out in the yard. Few years after his release, a news crew knocked on his door for one of those kitty diddlers in your neighborhood, do you know where they are segments. One of the kids from back in school has a very nice compilation of all these segments. At a 10-year-old high school reunion, met up with two guys. One who was captain of the football team, always had the hot chicks, you know the type. The other who had been a painfully shy and awkward nerd that was shunned and made fun of. Overheard the conversation with the nerd, instigated it with Mr. Football, which went something like this. Hey, what have you been doing with yourself? Mr. Football said he was in the Navy, I forget the rank, and was a cook at the Brig, aka Navy Jail. Nerd replied, hey, I joined the Navy too. He went on to very humbly say he was a lieutenant commander, fighter pilot, and was working on his PhD in some sort of engineering field. He walked off. True revenge of the nerd. I thought this was going to end in one of those and everybody clapped stories, but I'm glad this was more believable. Just saw a guy who ran with the weird crowd at my school. They were the anime manga type crowd, but I always respected them for doing what they enjoyed. He approached me at the local gym. A very polite, respectful guy always, and I found out that he was working and playing in 2 bands. I'm glad he came up to me, and I'm extremely glad he's doing what he loves to do. Let people do what they do, as they'll probably let you do what you love to as well. He's still my friend, still weird, just a bit more mature. I think he'll be single forever though. He gets girls, but never long term. He's just too unique. It will have to be a very certain person. Those words are doing a lot of heavy lifting there. I'm not sure you trust that kid at all. Weird, but always mad and very strong. My dad sent me a newspaper clipping some years ago. He was around 40 and at a country and western nightclub when 3 men in their 20s jumped him in the parking lot. He then went inside and told the bar owner that he'd been jumped in his parking lot. He then told him to call the police and to make sure an ambulance was called because they were hurt badly. Call an ambulance, but not for me. I dated the weird kid in middle school, but he moved away and we lost contact. We reconnected when I was in college. He dropped out of high school and was kind of lost in life. He'd gotten 2 girls pregnant and was working 3 jobs to pay child support. He flirted heavily with me when we talked, and I decided it wasn't worth the baggage and politely stepped out of his life. Last I heard, he became a skinhead and joined an alt-right faction in Oklahoma. This is a certified 0 to 100 moment. I was a weird kid. The way I would put it is, if I were born 10 to 15 years later, I probably would have been diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum. I was smart, emotionally precocious, but I had a lot of strange coordination and motor control issues. For me, playing looked like collecting or sorting piles of things from the backyard or lining up my toys in height order. Never had many friends, dressed like a dork, had trouble fitting in. I was awkward, teased, and bullied into late middle school. I grew out of it somehow. I don't really remember there being any process. I like to think that I grew into myself. I got good social skills. I'm relatively attractive, and people like me. Still have some weird idiosyncrasies, but I'm cool enough to own them nowadays. My childhood and adolescence still influence a lot of my fears, but overall, I'm glad to be who I am now, and growing up was important for that to happen. Let me introduce you to Josh. Josh was a strange boy in both looks and demeanor. Clearly, he was from a poor background, which stood out in school because the overall demographic of the school was middle to upper middle class. So Josh shows up on the first day, slightly grubby looking, barely able to write his own name at 11 years old and looking like he wanted to punch a wall. He quickly made a name for himself, acting up in class, being tardy, and generally being a bit of a nuisance. He'd disrupt lessons, he'd lash out at other students, and he had a clear anger problem. Josh became an easy target for bullies because he would react to their bullying, usually by throwing a chair. It's fair to say, Josh had little to no friends. We were a tutor group of about 27 to 30, depending on people coming and going. Not a particularly tight-knit, but we had bonded over a couple things. A girl who'd had a brush with death was our tutor. One of our tutors left partway through the year. By year 9, we, for the most part, began to tolerate Josh. Josh, as a result, became more trusting and calmed down. He still had a heck of a temper and he was still an easy target, but he began to try and socialize a bit more. One day, it was a rainy lunchtime, and he came and sat with a group of us, all from the same tutor group. We asked him how he was, and he disclosed to us that his mom's new boyfriend had been showing him homosexual adult images. We, of course, being 13 to 14, didn't really know what to say or how to react, but there was a resounding consensus that that was not normal. He'd hinted at a very, very unhappy home life before. In hindsight, I don't know why any of the teachers didn't pick up on it when things he had mentioned were such a safeguarding risk. The more and more Josh disclosed, more of how miserable his home life was, how abused he was, the more respect we had for him. He didn't know anything other than violence. He had never been shown love or respect. He had never been given the opportunity to better himself. Over time, we became very, very protective of Josh. The cool boys in our tutor group would step into fights to defend him. We'd all keep an eye out for him when he was walking home, etc. I saw Josh about a year ago. I caught a glimpse of him in the street and shouted his name. He came running over and gave me the biggest bear hug ever. He told me he'd been working really hard on himself and that he was hoping to get a job in the local comic book shop where he spends hours and hours reading. He seemed genuinely happy and like he'd escaped his abusive background. Honestly, I wish him the absolute best, and I hope he finds both happiness and stability. Last time I saw him, he was running across campus, although he wasn't late for class. He did this in high school all the time. I caught his attention and we walked and chatted. He was my friend in high school. He's doing great. Weird is good. Weird hugging girl. Just saw her about a month ago. She's a teacher now and living the American dream. I can tell her favorite teacher was also mine. She operates just like him. She's on a successful path. Homeboy, whose parents adopted him for the tax break, is happily married with children. He found love and despite everything going against him, is successful. High school students of Reddit, just because they're that kid does not mean they are not human. Be humble. We've all been that kid. Redditors who lost their job because of a post to a social media platform. What happened? I've recently come into contact with a few people who lost their job over a Facebook-type social media outlet post, and it got me wondering, what kind of jobs take social media posts so seriously? I worked customer support for a mobile game company. I was honest with a disheartened customer who had complained that recent changes had made the game pay to win. It had, in truth, been a glitch with an update. I told them as much, assuring them the team would be fixing it in the next update. But then the game's profits skyrocketed. The team kept the glitch and put out a statement describing the change as an intentional one designed to improve the play experience. But there was my name, plastered all over the game forums, claiming the opposite. I technically worked for a separate company that provided support for several studios, but the studio behind this game was our biggest customer. They approached my bosses, furious that I jeopardized their cash cow, and demanded I be fired. I promptly became familiar with the underside of the bus as I was gone within the week. TLDR, worked customer support for mobile games, told truth, went viral-ish, fired. Didn't lose my job, but I watched a friend lose his over a tweet. He tweeted, "So getting head while delivering pizzas is pretty sweet," one night while he was working. The next morning, he tweeted, "Yo, screw you, Papa John's. I don't need you or your stupid job anyway," or something to that effect. I've never laughed so hard in my life. I used to work for Geek Squad in college, and a coworker was fired when a famous actor came in and she posted on Facebook a lot of his private info. Like full name came into her store and bought this and has a black Amex card and stuff he had on his computer. Not once, but on 2 separate occasions. Worked at GameStop until 2010. The store was in a mall, and parents would always lead their kids in the store and go do their shopping. Sometimes the children would cry, sometimes they'd pee themselves, even had one number 2. Parents would get mad at us for not bringing them to the bathroom, what the heck? Or start screaming at their kids for not just playing games for a few hours without causing any problems. I tweeted about how the store wasn't there to babysit children and never really thought about that tweet again. Until, a few months later, same thing. Parent drops kid off in store, leaves. 20 minutes later, an older-looking guy is outside the store, on his flip phone, aiming it at the store. He's creeping me out, but I continue offering pointless warranties to customers while waiting for my next break, and then I noticed him walk near the entrance of the store and ask that kid where his parents are. This seemed really fishy, and the guy looked beyond suspicious. I was thinking he could be a kitty diddler, and I was right. He gets the kid to go with him, I call up mall security so they could check it out, and they caught him before he left the mall. He was arrested. The kid was crying, asking for his mom, who mall security could not reach because, as it turns out, she went to some stores outside of the mall area and she didn't actually come back for another 2 hours, at which point she threatened to sue me, GameStop, the mall, etc. Security guard lady told her that child services were called. They all walked away. That was the last time I saw them. Few days later, district manager, DM, shows up in store and I was fired on the spot because that lady made a complaint. DM found my Twitter and informed me that my approach to yesterday's dilemma and my tweet about how GameStop isn't a babysitting service has made them believe that I don't have the, quote, GameStop spirit. Both the manager and district manager told me I could use them as a reference on my resume though, which was great until they both lost their jobs a few weeks later. A former colleague of mine posted about how he was going to use up all his sick leave and then quit. He posted it at 9 a.m. He was told he had no more job at 11. I was working as a bartender and server for a place. The assistant manager was a petty tyrant and treated the staff like crap. I had made several complaints about him to the general manager and the owner with some of the other staff, but they refused to do anything about it. So I was done with this place and was currently looking for a new job when one day I was bartending and a very young-looking girl came. She hands me her out-of-state ID and I can tell that it is fake. I politely tell her that I can't serve her alcohol and explain that in this state we don't legally have to accept out-of-state IDs, blah blah blah. She was actually very understanding and there was no scene or issue. Her other friends arrive and they move to a table, and I inform their server about the fake ID. It is around this time that the assistant manager, who had been drinking Bloody Marys at the bar next door all morning and then napping in the office, came over. He then starts telling me that I don't know what a fake ID looks like and I don't have the right to refuse service and how stupid I am. He then tells me I have to serve the girl. I inform him that I have the legal right to refuse service and he cannot force me to. Anyway, I go home and post on Facebook about my day, and then include a photo of when I was managing a liquor store holding a device of medieval defense made out of all the fake IDs we had confiscated in 1 year. Also, a crown. The next day, I was called in and let go for refusing to cooperate with management and what have you. TLDR, got fired for posting a sweet picture of me wearing a crown and holding a shield of fake IDs. Not me, but the company I work for. A prospective employee just passed his interview and was told that all he needs to do is pass a drug test and a physical and he would start on Monday. The company Facebook guy found the new hire on Facebook and the guy had just posted 20 minutes after the interview, "Crap, anyone know how to pass a drug test in 24 hours?" I was younger and an idiot. I posted something on Facebook about wanting to go home and play The Sims so I could create telecommunications store I worked for on it and then slowly kill off all the customers. I was working a late night shift in a mall and forgot our new coworker had added me on Facebook days before. Joined a game studio alongside a guy who just finished his philosophy degree. He felt that the game's official forums were the best place to discuss whether disabled people would be, quote, of as much value as pigs after a post-apocalyptic event and if they should be simply slaughtered and eaten, all using his company account, of course. I don't even know where to begin with this. I don't have the mental or physical capacity to give this guy the verbal beatdown he so desperately deserves. And probably physical beatdown too while we're at it. I was let go from the nation's third largest insurance company for what were called offensive tweets. Apparently, someone with my similar name was tweeting vulgar things to comedy accounts, and they brought me into HR and terminated me. Yes, I sued for wrongful termination so I could finish getting my MBA. I was once passed over for a job because I barely use Facebook. They straight up told me that they couldn't trust me because of how little info was on my page. For future reference, I'm sorry employers that 90% of my Facebook page is related to StarCraft and or miscellaneous gaming. I'm sorry that I don't get drunk and post embarrassing photos of things you could fire me over. My personal life is my business and not Facebook's.
You must construct additional profiles. We require more discreditable posts.
A company I worked for had it written into their 7-page contracts that you were not allowed to even reference said company on social media. Anyone in breach would be fired instantly. There's a page on Facebook called We Hate Blank that's currently one of the world's biggest corporate hate pages. It all started when someone working in our call center posted online about how much the customers suck. They began something of a war between the staff and customers posting on employees' walls and vice versa. The company was/is a major player in its market, essentially had a monopoly, and there was a noticeable drop in sales that year. All in all, around 20 people were fired. I work in a hospital, and there was a police shooting in my area a couple of years ago, and multiple officers were brought into our ER. One officer was dead on arrival, and a number of idiot hospital employees posted condolences on their Facebook pages with the name of the officer before the family was officially informed. If memory serves, 7 or 8 employees were rightfully fired for that one. It's amazing to hear all of the healthcare blunders. I work in an ICU and saw a pretty messed up violation of patient privacy. A nurse was trying to contact the wife of a patient of ours, but somehow got his ex-wife. The ex-wife lost her mind on the nurse and started demanding information. When we finally got a hold of the wife, it turns out that the patient has a restraining order on the ex-wife due to a bunch of issues and told us not to release any information. We marked the patient as confidential so she wouldn't be able to find him. The ex-wife kept calling us saying she knew he was still in there, what room number he was in, and other information that we never provided her. We were wondering how the ex-wife knew all of this, and how her name was listed as the next of kin. It turns out that her friend worked in the admitting department in the same hospital, and she was the one that A, updated the contact information, she apparently checks on his patient file constantly, and B, kept logging into one of our systems and released his health information, such as tests he's had, results to lab work, and reading history/transfer/discharge reports once the ex-wife told her that he was admitted to our unit. They apparently did this all the time whenever the ex-wife found out that her ex-husband was in our hospital for any reason. After a couple days of proper investigation, the admitting clerk was let go and fined for improperly accessing patient information/release of information. She basically killed her career for her friend, as we basically only have one healthcare entity in our area. Not me, but a girl on my Facebook worked for the postal service in my town. She posted on Facebook how she wanted to slit her boss's throat and went into some pretty gory details. Then, about 5 hours later, she posted another status about how the feds showed up at her house and that one of her coworkers had showed her boss the status and she was now fired. She's obviously really dumb and trashy. I had to fire an employee for a tweet he wrote about a customer. He tweeted, "Customer's full name would be a great name for a gay adult film star." I found out about it when the customer's lawyer called me the next day threatening action. Turns out the guy worked for the local newspaper and obsessively searched his name on all social media. A little over a year ago, a bunch of employees at my old job got a rash. It wasn't contagious, our blood was clean, and the doctors were confused. I took steroids from day 1 and had it for a little over 2 weeks, I believe. I didn't even have it as bad as a couple people. Everyone continued to work, even though some people had it in exposed areas. Employees were itching and talking about it, but management did nothing. Even the manager had it, but the owner didn't, so he didn't care to take any action. Well, I posted a picture of my rash on Reddit and gave absolutely no information on where I worked. It got to the front page of r/WTF and a coworker saw it and obviously recognized it. He showed people because he thought it was funny, but there was a coworker already out to get me and she was close with our manager. So they told the manager that I had posted the picture on Facebook, which obviously would have been a big deal. So the manager told me to leave, but said she would have the owner meet with me. I knew as soon as I got home that she wasn't going to tell the owner to contact me. But I was already planning to quit the next weekend, so I didn't bother to meet with him. I am not working at a place that allows the majority of their staff to get a rash and not investigate it. I should probably add that this was a restaurant. Not me, but my mom's ex-boyfriend. He was a waiter at a very elite restaurant and had normally expected very nice tips. Some guy left him a $5 tip for an over $100 bill and he got angry and posted the customer's information on Facebook. He got fired the next day. Wow, this blew up. It seems some people are making some pretty bad assumptions. So he was actually a very good waiter. High-end restaurants really wanted him. It probably went to his head at some point because he started to pick up a drinking/staying out late after work habit. He started having some issues with my mom as well, and they became roommates only. My mom moved out and he got really stressed, and I heard from his prior manager that he started getting strikes at work. He also frequently ranted on Facebook about bad customers. A while later, he posted the customer's info on Facebook and was fired. From what I know now, he's got a job at a bar but is still drinking. He wasn't a bad guy by any means. He just started losing himself and making really bad choices. My mom still keeps in contact with his family, but from what I hear, it's still bad. I had to fire someone for one. He was a volunteer firefighter and left for a call, which I allowed. 15 minutes later, someone showed me his 5-minute-old post of him riding quads, saying something along the lines of, "Sometimes you just need to F off from work." That put him on a final warning. He then left because he said his house was on fire. Then half an hour later, his wife tagged him in a photo of him sitting in a kiddie pool in front of the house. The funny thing is, in both cases, if he had simply asked to leave early, I probably would have said yes. To clarify, this was over a few different days, a few weeks apart, and he worked for me, but also volunteered as a firefighter. The fire chief also found out about this and dismissed him from that position as well. This guy had a few issues, needless to say, and honesty was not something with which he was familiar. My dad was in a similar position. The guy asked to leave early, my dad said yes. Then a half hour later, the guy posted that he was in the emergency room. We later learned that it was because he tore his urethra after he stuck a screwdriver in there. Edit. It was a Phillips. Oh my god, why is that so important to everyone? Okay. Reddit? Hi. It's me, the guy reading these posts. Don't stick things in your dingling where they don't belong. I remember reading about a guy who shoved a caulk gun up there one time, and I still cringed just as hard. So dingling havers of Reddit, please take care of yourselves because I don't want to have to read more about your trauma. It costs $0 to be nice to yourself. My female friend, 18, was DM'd through Twitter by the news presenter, 37, of our city. He was talking about her beach pictures and how she is really pretty and how they need to get together. She ended up telling him that it's pretty ridiculous that he's trying to get with her. He lost his job later that week. The only real reason he lost his job was because he used the Weather Channel's Twitter account. Oh, this happened to me many years ago. I was on the job a week at a law firm and had to ride with one of the female employees to the UPS store. She was a terrible driver and almost wrecked multiple times. I posted on Facebook, 1 week on the job and my coworker is trying to kill me. Worst driver ever. The next day, I was called into my boss's office with the girl sitting there with an expressionless look on her face, and there was a printout of my post. It was awkward and they fired me on the spot. All of my account information was also set to private, so they figured out a way to check my activity. Former Chipotle manager here. As many of you know, Chipotle gives away free crap on Halloween, so it's a mandatory weekend for everyone to work. Well, one of our employees called off that Thursday saying he had swine flu. Right. Of course, he posted pictures of his weekend partying on his Facebook, upon which he was friends with our kitchen manager, general manager, and district manager. Per company policy and common freaking sense, you can't return to work from serious contagious stuff without a doctor's note. So he shows back up on Wednesday acting all fine and saying the doc cleared him. Oh, but his mom threw his release note away. Too bad, buddy. We need that crap or you can't work. Since we didn't know when he would have it, we only gave him 1 day on the schedule anyway. So then his mommy calls me and asks why he can't work. I ask her if she went to a restaurant and found out a cook hadn't proven he was clear from having swine flu, would she eat there? She saw my point. But it's not his fault she threw away the note. They were remodeling. I asked, why can't the dog write a new one? Well, he went on vacation. Couldn't the receptionist or a PA get them something? She huffed and hung up on me. The next day he puts on Facebook, Dear Chipotle and managers, instead of cutting hours on someone, why not grow the freaking balls to fire them outright? Suck my dingaling. Pretty easy to let him go after that. I got fired from an internship for posting on Reddit before. It was a very small environmental engineering consulting firm. We were doing work on a site that had lead and arsenic contamination on it. The site was very dusty, and if it didn't rain for a few days, the dust would often kick up and blow onto the street next to the site, which happened to be the main road in this semi-smallish town. Someone mentioned on Reddit, in a totally unrelated way, that they were from this town. I made a mention of the contamination and told the dude that if he ever saw dust coming off the site that he should contact the engineers which were housed above one of the local bars. Apparently, this guy didn't really want the site to be redeveloped at all because of the already high congestion in the surrounding roads, and he called and complained and mentioned my post on Reddit. The company was so small it was obvious it was me who posted it, and I fessed up about what I had said and immediately deleted the post. Even though I didn't do anything illegal or even remotely immoral, I was fired because I was seen as a liability. Screw that. People deserve to know if the dust they're breathing in could give them cancer. I moved on to a different field, marine biology, and haven't even remotely looked back. Content warning, good old-fashioned racism ahead. A girl I know was a nurse at a hospital and got fired for posting things on Facebook such as, "So sleepy here in the ICU. Will someone please code and give me something to do? Hashtag, is that bad? I'm not trying to offend anyone, but I have to ask. Is it like a Native American custom not to take a dump at home? Is it like an offense to their husbands to dump at home? Every time I go into a public bathroom and it smells like someone died in there, a native is washing their hands. Literally every single time. Like, lay off the Navajo tacos." The dumbest part about it was she was tagging the hospital she worked at in her posts. If you have to start your post with, "I'm not trying to offend anyone, but," there's a good chance you're probably going to offend someone. Or just straight up be offensive under the guise of asking questions. I remember hearing a story about a young teacher in my province getting fired for posting vacation pictures to Facebook. Bikini, margaritas. A dipstick parent or teacher reported it, as any uptight group of PTA mothers would want to defend young eyes from that. "Oh, we can't have our children gazing upon such heresy. Having fun, enjoying yourself, it brings torment to the soul. Oh!" I didn't get fired, but I did get written up for a post on Facebook. It was about 5 years ago at my old job. Spring just started, and it was the first day it was in the 60s. On lunch, I posted something like, "What a beautiful day. Can't wait to get out of work and enjoy it." Well, that didn't go over well. Funny thing is, I wasn't Facebook friends with anyone from work. They had one guy that would creep on people's Facebooks. This is when I learned about privacy settings. He told the boss, and I got pulled in the office. They basically asked why I didn't like my job and why I couldn't wait to get out of work. I was like, it's the first warm day in what feels like 6 months. Of course I want to be outside. The reason I got written up was because I was, quote, on Facebook at work, even though I was on lunch. Bunch of idiots worked at that place. It's kind of surprising how delusional bosses are. "Oh no, he might want to get off work and enjoy a nice day. Call him in! We must investigate what it means to be human!" What happened to you when you were young that you didn't understand until years later, potentially not safe for work? I was in LA at the age of 10 and ended up with sunburn as I am English and not used to the heat. My dad took me to the restroom where we shared a stall, and he helped me take my t-shirt off so that he could reapply after sun. This was pretty painful. I was screaming inside a locked stall, saying that it hurt, so was surprised when a burly guy forced open the door, looking quite annoyed at my dad, who explained correctly what was happening. I grimaced through the pain and agreed as best as possible. Only years later that I realized that burly guy was a top bloke, and that the pain he was trying to save me from wasn't that kind of chafing. TLDR, a nice, bear-like man made sure I wasn't being inappropriately touched by my own father. I found a butt inside my dad's closet when I was 6. A butt. Looking back on it now, it was probably an adult toy, just something he made to look like a woman's butt. Either way, I pulled it out of his closet and was sitting next to it on the couch when he got home from work. I was a lonely kid. Edit, I'm a girl. When me and my sister were around the ages of 8 and 6, we gave our mom a necklace for her birthday. She was about 36 years old at that time. It was a blue/green twinkling necklace, and we thought it was perfect for mom because she loves glitter and jewelry. She wore it at every occasion she had guests for dinner and similar. We were very proud of our gift because she liked it so much that she wore it all the time. Years later, I realized that it was an ugly piece of crap. Really, no sane human would wear this dog collar in disguise. I cringed at the thought of actually giving it to mom. Then it clicked. She wore it for us, so that we don't feel guilty of giving crappy things to her while making a fool out of herself in front of everybody else. I love you, Mom. When I was about 14, a guy who I went to school with had leukemia. He disappeared from school for a while he had chemo, and then came back when he recovered a little. We weren't particularly close. In fact, there'd been a little bit of animosity between us, for no particular reason, just petty kid stuff. But last day of term, as I was walking towards the school gate, he caught up with me and walked with me. He told me he was sorry there'd been tension between us and that he liked me and hoped we could be friends. He died during the summer break, and I realized sometime later that maybe he had known he wasn't going to make it, and that he was trying to make his peace with the world before he went. When I was a little kid, we had a kid in our class named George who was mentally disabled. We had special needs kids in our school, and we wouldn't have them in the same class, but they would share recess with the rest of us. George dressed funny, he couldn't speak very well, and he had a hard time understanding what we were telling him. As you might imagine, this led to a lot of the kids excluding him or making fun of him. My friends and I decided to be his friend. He was a nice kid, didn't mean any harm. He was just a bit slow. Years later, in telling the story to someone else, I remember my teacher explaining that he was quote-unquote Greek, which I didn't understand at the time. Thinking about it, I remember that just like the special needs kids, the ESL kids shared recess with us. George wasn't disabled. He was just a recent immigrant from Greece who didn't speak English very well. Visiting my aunt and her cool roommate Susan when I was a child. Didn't realize until my cousin said something when I was in high school. You mean her roommate? Oh, holy crap. My mom told me that my goldfish ran away. You are now imagining a fish with legs. You're welcome. We had a science fair in 6th grade, and I was doing some sleep experiment or something. Being the know-it-all I was, I referred to my subjects as testes, like trainees, I thought. My teacher politely suggested calling them test takers instead. Years later, it dawned upon me, and I have mad respect for him not laughing in my face. I would have. When I was 12, my divorced mother and I lived in a nice duplex in my hometown. She would go to the city after I fell asleep and party downtown with my aunt almost every night. I didn't know this until I was older. One night in particular, I fell asleep on the couch and halfway woke up to the sound of the front door opening and closing. I saw my mom walk in with a creepy, hooded, shadowy figure close behind her. I fell back asleep. The next morning, I asked my mom who was with her when she came home last night. She looked terribly confused. I told her about the figure behind her, and the color drained out of her face, and she shook her head and told me to stop playing games. That if I kept telling ghost stories, I would invite malevolent spirits into the house. Found out like a year ago that she brought a guy home and made me believe it was a ghost so I wouldn't tell my grandparents. Crafty woman. TLDR, my mother brought a guy home one night and let me believe for over 10 years that I had seen a ghost. Sometimes we would stop at my aunt's work so that my dad could go in and talk to her. I wasn't allowed in because I was a kid and it was an adult place. The only other things that ever got the descriptor adult were adult films, which were not for kids because of all the screwing. So I happily assumed that my aunt worked someplace where all sorts of screwing was happening. Years later, I was driving by and noticed that it was a retirement home. When I was about 4 or 5, we got 2 very important life-changing bits of medical news. The first was that my baby brother was on the way. The second was that my father was diagnosed with acute lymphoma and had about 2 weeks to live. When I was little, I had no grasp of how serious cancer was. My mom told me my dad was sick, but that was it. I remember my mom kept insisting that I spent time with him, but I would always get angry when he got too tired to play or kicked me out so he could vomit from the chemo. I remember one night in particular where my school had my first back-to-school night/carnival. They had all sorts of rides and stuff. My dad had just had extensive surgery and had staples across his entire neck. I used to joke that he was like Frankenstein. My dad managed to make it through the big presentation the teacher made to the whole class and their parents, but barely. I thought this was boring, but would be worth sitting through because I would get to go on carnival rides afterwards. But my dad had to leave. He couldn't even stand up. I could not understand how my strong 6'4" father could be so selfish. If he could sit through the boring part, why not the good part? I, to this day, feel tremendously guilty over how I treated him and the tantrum I threw when my mom was struggling to hold my dad up and my dad was struggling just to stay conscious. Fortunately, the doctors were wrong. He made it well past the 2 weeks and eventually beat cancer 5 years later. It took years before I understood how seriously sick he really was. He had gotten down to 90 pounds, but to me, he was still a Superman. We had this gym teacher in elementary school that would bring a bag of apples to class and give the girls one if they'd give him a massage. I was mad because I absolutely loved apples, still do. I thought it was unfair that only the girls got apples, so I told my teacher how Mr. So-and-so would only let the girls massage him for apples, and we had to do sports. I was not an athletic child, so the idea of eating apples versus gym activities greatly appealed to me. I had to go to the principal's office to tell them my story, which was basically, this is bullcrap. Everyone should be getting apples, or no one should be getting apples. Other students corroborated my story, and soon enough, so-and-so was gone. TLDR, escaped, prevented, and ended potential inappropriate abuse from a teacher because I love apples. My dad was a fairly strict guy. Military background, very type A, etc. I was a very outdoorsy tomboy of a girl. As a kid, I loved to find caterpillars and build them little homes and find the best flowers for them to eat, and my dad loved this hobby of mine. So much so, he would encourage my caterpillar hunting, which I always thought seemed a little weird, but I didn't question it. There were a few plants out by our barbecue in the back that he specifically asked me to keep an eye on, because, as he told it to me, this was the best place to find them. My kid brain just thought my dad and I had found a common ground and that he wanted to help. About 5 years later, as my naivete started to wear off, I realized my dad was a total pothead. My brother, who is 10 years older than me, was chatting with me about my new realization one day, and that's when it was finally spelled out for me. Those plants that, according to my pops, were the best place to find my footed worm friends were actually just my dad's pot plants, and he enlisted my help to keep them bug-free. TLDR, my dad encouraged me to hunt caterpillars off his pot plants. I just thought he was trying to help me find the coolest bugs to play with. I'm a redhead, but neither of my parents or my brother is a redhead. So when we were out in public when I was young, a lot of people would ask where my red hair came from. One day, when I was probably 6 or so, my parents told me to start answering the question with, "From the mailman," which I did constantly because people always seemed to react to it. It wasn't until I got to high school that it clicked that the mailman in this scenario had not delivered my red hair in an envelope, but that it had come from a much different package. When I was about 8, I was using my parents' bathroom and picked up a hand towel by the sink and a plastic member fell out. I already knew what a member was since my siblings and I had watched the hilarious Where Did I Come From sexual education video narrated by Howie Mandel. I thought this plastic member was hilarious, and when my little sister was taking a shower, I poked it in through the shower curtain and would poke her with it. She thought it was pretty funny too. Our mom was horrified to find us playing with it, and when we asked what it was for, she said it was for medical purposes and studying. We were never able to find it again. It wasn't until a few years ago when my sister and I were reminiscing about stupid things we did as children that I remembered this incident and told her, "Oh my god, we played with mom's adult toy." TLDR, found my mom's adult toy and joked around with it. Sister and I didn't realize until about 15 years later what it was. When I was 6, we used to play a lot with Pokemon cards at school. One recess, I left my deck inside the classroom. When I came back, my Charizard was missing from it. 3 days later, a friend from class came to me and told me he found my Charizard outside in a bush. Took me 10 years to realize he stole it from me and then got cold feet and gave it back. When I was 7 and my brother was 4, a man came up to the backyard where we were playing and asked if he wanted to see the puppy in his van. My brother said yes and he started to follow him. I grabbed my brother's arm and screamed very dramatically, "No!" until my parents came out. The man waved at my parents and then drove away. I felt a little embarrassed for, quote, overreacting by screaming no like that. Looking back, there is no way he wasn't a creeper. I asked my mom just now if she remembered that, and why she didn't report him to the police to let them know there was a potential kidnapper in the neighborhood. She said, because he didn't actually do anything. When I was younger, my house was messy, and my mom only ever cleaned on special occasions, and that was only certain rooms people were allowed in. I always thought this was completely normal. We had wine boxes holding up our couch and shoved right up our chimney, which was covered by a fire screen. Our kitchen smelled of mold and rotting food, the benches and floors were covered in the source of the smell and other unidentifiable objects. My clothes used to sit in a washing basket so long after they were washed that they would start to grow fuzz. There was one room beside mine which was so overpacked with rubbish and toys that I could barely crack the door open. It was just filthy overall. No one ever saw this though, and if they did, I can only imagine that my mom would have lost custody of me immediately, and I think she knew that. I lived like that until I was 12, and I didn't really understand what was happening until recently when watching an episode of Hoarders. It's kinda messed me up. I can't sleep unless my house is spotless, and I constantly have panic attacks if I forget to clean something before leaving the house. In kindergarten, I had a best friend named Daniel, and we played with toy dinosaurs and traded them all the time. January comes around, and I invite him to my birthday party I was having at my house. He never showed up that day, and my mom told me that day he wasn't going to be able to make it, as well as he wouldn't be able to come to school again. Little kid me was like, okay, I'll see him later. He died in a car crash on the way to my birthday party. Edit, Thank you for your support and kind words. To the people saying this didn't happen or other rude things, this did happen, and I feel sad every single birthday I have. To the people asking, did I get his gift? I did not. But I still have the last glow-in-the-dark Triceratops that he gave me. Really, how heartless do you have to be to just assume a story somebody wrote on the internet is made up, especially when it's about something as emotional as this? Like, I get it, you could easily lie about something for clout or internet points, but come on, man, you can't just assume something like that. I hope I'm not late to the party. When I was about 6 or 7, I was looking for bugs in my backyard when I came across a super rare and cool praying mantis. Naturally, I scooped it up and put it in my bug container. Later on, I was looking for more bugs when I found yet another praying mantis. Lucky day. I was super excited and put it in the container with the other praying mantis. Both of them stood in there dead still and just kind of bobbed around like praying mantises do. I came back a few years later and was appalled by what I found. The bigger mantis standing there as still as ever right on top of a praying mantis head and legs. I was super spooked. Was that mantis a killer? Did the smaller mantis fall apart or explode? What happened? It really weirded me out for a while. I'd say about 10 or so years later, I found out that the female mantis eats the male after screwing. I still don't know if I'm an accomplice to a murderer or a world-class wingman. In my adolescence, telemarketers frequently called our house. My parents instructed my sister and myself to respond to questions like, "Is your mom or dad home?" with, "She or he's in the shower." Well, one summer day, when I was 6, we got a telemarketer call. After I explained I was only a child and could subsequently not conduct business for the household, he asked, "Is your mom home?" I said, "No, she's in the shower." "What about your dad?" "He's in there too." It was not until years later that I realized his sudden embarrassed laughing was caused by me accidentally making this guy think my parents were getting it on in the shower while their poor innocent son was home. I lost one of my teeth when I was 7 years old, so I was excited to get money and stuff from the tooth fairy. I put the tooth under the pillow and I was ready to get my prize for losing a tooth. The next morning, I woke up and the tooth was gone, but no present. I went and told my dad about how I just got scanned from the tooth fairy and he was like, "Oh, the tooth fairy had to run fast, so she gave me the money to give to you." He then pulls out his wallet and gives me the $2 that the tooth fairy gave him. I was so happy, but still wondered why the tooth fairy was in such a rush. My mom was really intent on having my younger brother believe in things like Santa and the tooth fairy for as long as possible. Once she forgot to replace his tooth with money. I asked her about it, and in her infinite wisdom, she had me, I got home before everyone else, make a letter from the tooth fairy to explain why I was late. I said that 2 kids had gotten into a fight and knocked every single one of their teeth out, so she ran out of quarters and had to run home to get more. I was quite proud of the story, and he bought it. But he started having doubts, so he left a note with one of his teeth asking for proof that the tooth fairy was real. My mom wrote him a letter back and taped a small lock of black hair to it. All of my family has blonde hair except for my dad, but he keeps his very short. He bought it hook, line, and sinker, and didn't find out the tooth fairy wasn't real until well after he lost all of his teeth. Had that note on his wall for years. Turns out, the hair was from the single black spot on my grandma's dog that was living with us at the time. Pure genius. When I was 6 and my brother was 4, we used to walk to our cousin's house, which was 2 houses down. One evening, we asked our mother if we could go over and she said yes and lets us walk over by ourselves. While we're walking, this car drives up to us and asks if we knew where the nearest McDonald's was and if we'd like to come with him. I told him we weren't allowed to eat McDonald's without our mother's permission and turned to get her to ask if we were allowed. She was already running outside to get us when the car sped off. I was around 15 when I was reminiscing with my family and she brought it up. Creepy realization. When I would stay at my grandmother's house, I had a bunch of VHS tapes about dinosaurs and stuff that I wanted to watch. Sometimes I get to watch them, but only if my grandpa was home. Mima always said, "You'll have to wait until Peepaw gets back. I can't work that VCR." She also had all her soaps recorded on tape, and many times I saw her record them without my grandpa being home. She feigned incompetence so that she didn't have to watch my dinosaur movies, and I never realized it until I was an adult. It is the wise woman who plays the fool. Meemaw, you sly fox. I never understood that not everyone had people drop bags of groceries on their steps, while the people just rang the bell and drove away. Dawned on me as an adult that we were poor. Then, I looked back at the old pics and noticed all the signs. Tiny Christmas tree in the background, disappointed faces on Christmas pics, no vacation pictures. Dang it, I'm gonna try to avoid having my kids live that way. The other part of that is I didn't realize how stressed my mom always was until I got older and realized not everyone's parents freaked out weekly and slammed doors and peeled off in their car, leaving their kids alone and scared. I specifically remember one incident where my mom, brother, and I went to the grocery store, and while we were all walking to the car, my mom dropped the gallon of milk and it exploded all over the ground. My mom started crying, and my brother said, "Don't cry over spilled milk, Mom," kind of chuckling. I didn't understand at all. Now, looking back, it hurts me to think how hard my mom was trying to keep everything together. She passed away at age 51 when I was 18. She had a rough adulthood. I live my life now hoping to become what she wanted me to be. She made tons of mistakes, but she was there for me on her own, and she tried so hard. All you teens, take notice of how your parents act when they think you're not looking. You might be surprised to find that they are very stressed and working super hard to make you happy, oftentimes with only frustration to show for it. I was cleaning chickens with my grandparents when I was a kid, probably about 10 years old. I was pulling out the insides, and I found what I thought were 2 eggs that were growing inside the chicken. I got all excited and showed my grandma and told my mom about it when she picked me up. I noticed that they both had smirks that seemed odd when I told them about it. Years later, I thought back about that time and realized that it was a rooster, and those were his nuts. Sounds like somebody found out why roosters go cock-a-doodle-doo. I'm sorry. Okay, this one's a wild ride, so stick around. Carjacked with my cousin. I was 12, she was 16. Gun pointed at my head and everything. At the court hearing, they were caught, my lawyer person lady asked if I was aware that the 4 men who carjacked my cousin and I had intention to kidnap us, as the police found duct tape and rope in their getaway car and they fessed up to it. That was a heavy bomb dropped on me while I was testifying against them, but I never really understood how lucky I was until I was older. Since everyone asked why they changed their minds, I've heard that the leader of the group decided against it because we reminded him of his kid sisters. Since it was technically my uncle's car and happened in my uncle's driveway, they were the ones responsible for pressing charges against the men, who were pulled over for speeding down the freeway just as 2 detectives arrived to ask us questions. The car was totaled. Tattoo artists of Reddit. What is your most, are you sure, tattoo you've been asked to do / have done? I actually refused to do this one. An 18-year-old girl came in wanting her boyfriend's name on her lower back. She had never met him. She was his prison pen pal for a month, and he was being released in a couple weeks, and she wanted to get it to surprise him. No judgments on ex-cons or 18-year-old girls, but I got the impression the relationship wasn't going to last. That's not the good kind of surprise. Imagine if you're chatting with a girl on OkCupid, and it's going okay, so you meet up for your first date, and she says she has a surprise for you. So you're thinking, awesome, did she buy me a gift? Or maybe she wants to show me a cool place when we're walking through the city. Or maybe she just wants to give me a surprise hug, because everyone likes surprise hugs from cute girls. Nope. Turns out she's tattooed your name on her body. I'm the type of person who thinks quote-unquote red flags are typically overreactions because everyone deserves a fair chance. But this right here, this is a real freaking red flag that's on fire, and someone is waving it frantically while holding a megaphone in their other hand, into which they are screaming, "Run! Run if you want to live! Get the heck out now!" An artist at the local tattoo parlor I go to tattooed a guy's ball sack, all orange with a scary face on it. The guy referred to it as a sack-o'-lantern. Now fellas, we need to talk. You're not going to be able to use this for 11 months out of the year. And for the 1 month you get to use this on, it's for 1 day only. I just got done watching a YouTube video on the worst Christmas gifts of 2022, and some of those gifts were Christmas-themed Christmas gifts. I just want you to think about that before you decide to get something holiday-related permanently tattooed on your body. A guy came in and got his wife's name covered up with the portrait of his new girlfriend. My coworker used part of her shirt in the picture to cover up the name. Then, 2 months later, he turned his now ex-girlfriend's portrait into a demon. I started working at another shop, and in came the same guy with the third girl, and they were getting matching tattoos on their hands. When I walked to the front and saw him, he totally pretended he didn't know me. Dude came in and asked me to tattoo a portrait of his girlfriend. Only, the portrait was a duck-face Snapchat selfie. I jokingly suggested adding her holding the phone, taking the selfie, but he thought it was a great idea. They've only been dating 6 months, and he didn't tell her he was going to get it. He came back a month later to add her name above it. My ex-tattooist, I didn't know that was a thing until now, tried to convince me to get a broken condom with the word whoops above it. Obviously, I declined. He ended up tattooing it on his own upper arm with his son's birthday below. Mate had to tattoo a picture of Bill Cosby to a dude's back in the mid-2000s. Poor guy probably regrets that now. Zip zap zoobity-bop! Was in booking a tattoo one day, and a woman came in to buy her soon-to-be 16-year-old daughter a tattoo. Owner and tattooist says, "Sure, we can sort something out. What is she wanting?" Mother says she wants to get the Playboy bunny on the inside of her wrist. Artist refused and said, "I don't want to be responsible for something so cliche and visible on such a young girl." There was an argument, but the woman leaves yelling she is going elsewhere where her money is good enough. He had strong views on neck, face, and hand tattoos. Didn't stop him from doing a fast food character orgy on a guy's back though. I know a lot of tattoo artists who will flat out refuse neck, hand, and face tattoos on a young person if they aren't tatted up already, because that foolish/impulsive tattoo can create some major waves down the line from getting a job to be flat out profiled. And, like a bartender, they ultimately reserve the right to decide whether to do the tattoo or not, just like a bartender doesn't have to serve someone if they aren't comfortable with it. Definitely had many of these. One really great dingling related one recently. I work at Vic Market Tattoo in Melbourne. If you know the area, you know it's one of the older Melbourne tattoo shops. With that history comes a lot of older customers who ramble on about their experience of getting tattooed here over 20 years ago, which is why they inevitably come back. This older gent, easily in his 80s, comes to the front desk and points me out from way down the back of the shop. I want to talk to that guy. Confused, I meander up to the front to be met with a blush of embarrassment. He stumbles into his request. "Now, I'm not here to offend you or to make light of the wonderful work you do, but I do have a strange ask for you," he states. Here's where it gets weird, and I really feel like he could have led with a sentence better than, "So I was watching this young chap take a whiz the other day, and he had just the most beautiful bee tattooed on the head of his dingling, and I wanted to request to have the exact same bee tattooed on my dingling." Slightly taken aback and slightly amused, I tell him we can definitely do that, but that there are extra costs involved. Once I told him the price, he almost fell over, didn't respond, and mumbled his way out of the shop. Never will I forget. I was just watching this young chap take a whiz. I tattooed a swear word on a woman's hip. Just the swear word. She still loves it, but it makes me really uncomfortable when I think about her at the beach. I also had a friend want me to tattoo his girlfriend's name in Old English on his arm. I said, no girlfriends. He was mad because I was his friend and should do it. I said that's exactly why I wouldn't do it. If they don't last, I'm still his friend. It's incredibly hard to tell someone you won't do their tattoo because their relationship might not last. Newsflash, he got our competitor to do the tattoo. Breaking news, they aren't together anymore. Another guy, when I first started out, wanted to get the fascist hunter image. It's a cartoon guy clubbing a swastika. Even though it's an anti-racism image, he still would have looked like he had a giant swastika on his chest from 10 feet away and would spend the rest of his life explaining it. I decided to not do the tattoo. Guy came into the shop I work at wanting a cover-up of a previous regrettable tattoo. Pretty normal until he casually mentioned it's on his dingling, and it's a red rocket. None of the dudes in the shop wanted to cover it up or even see it. Only person who stepped up was one of the female artists. She was like, I don't think I have a dingling tattoo for my portfolio, so screw it, let's cover it up. The only possible way to cover it up was to add so much black work, so she freehand drew a tuxedo onto his schlong. Dude ended up with a dapper dingling, and he was happy with it. Weirdest day at work ever. I know this guy who wanted a quote-unquote cutie mark on a guy's butt. A cutie mark is the marking the ponies have on their rear in the My Little Pony series. For everyone wondering what his cutie mark is, I don't remember. It was his own special mark. Last year, while doing a guest spot in Portugal, I had a guy come in while he was on holiday for his stag party. The guy wanted all the names of his friends tattooed on his butt cheeks. 13 names on each cheek, and 3 of his mates wanted to sign their own names. Sure, buddy. Sure. I was a shop girl, so it was my job to get everything set up for the tattoos. I had a couple come in and want each other's names tattooed on them. Okay, no problem. At this shop, we had a rule that anything involving words has to have the person sign a copy of the lettering to make sure everything is spelled correctly. So they write their names down, the artist draws the lettering, and I give them the copies to double-check spelling and sign off on it. The woman looks at the man's name. He wrote down his name to give to the artist and says it's spelled wrong. We double-check, and that's how he spelled it, and he looks at it and says it's right, and they argue about this. I go back and look at how it is spelled on his ID, and sure enough, it's spelled wrong. So he decides maybe it is spelled wrong, and the artist redraws it. On all his paperwork, he had spelled his name wrong, the way he had written it for the artist. His name is pretty common. I think he just really didn't know how to spell his name. This was a couple in probably their late 20s, early 30s with a few kids together. The guy's name? Jeffrey. We had this lovely exchange student come into the studio for about a year to get all sorts of piercings, and then the day finally came that he turned 18. So he asked to sit down and had a chat with him about what he wanted. Now, the way he asked me made me think that it was going to be this big, elaborate design. He asked for a maths equation on his foot. He wanted 3 + 4 = 8. I cautiously asked that he knew that was the incorrect answer to the equation. His response was, "Oh yeah, I know. I just think it'd make a funny tattoo." So yeah, that and another time I tattooed Scooby-Doo and Shaggy on a guy's bum cheeks. A man came into the shop my husband works at on his 18th birthday and got a pentagram with a goat on the front of his throat. First tattoo in a very visible spot that is satanic. I don't know that kid, but I'm pretty sure he's regretting that decision. My husband refused to do this tattoo, but someone else in the shop did. On another note, my white trash biological father had "Let's Screw" tattooed on his hands when he laced his fingers together. I never knew what they said when I was a kid. I finally realized it at his funeral. I'm pretty sure he got it in prison. I've tattooed a guy's current wife's name on him. In the same session, covered up his previous wife's name, and he also showed me another, different previous wife's name he had on him. He didn't want to cover that one though. She must have not been that bad. Okay, that's a lot right off the bat. We also had this couple come in all the time to get tattooed at the first shop I worked at. The guy would come in sometimes with a side girl and buy her tattoos, sometimes with his fiancée. After they were married, his fiancée wanted me to tattoo their wedding date on her wrist. I felt really weird trying to talk her out of it while not feeling like it was my place to tell her about this guy's behavior. I ended up doing it for her, and a year later, she came in to get a red line tattooed through the date. TLDR, don't get names or dates unless they're your kids or dead. One of my dad's friends got a Gary Glitter tattoo back when he was popular, regretting that big portrait of a kitty diddler on his arm now that he is 60. Friend wanted angel wings tattooed on her back and asked me to go since I was the only person she knew with tattoos. We walk into a pretty well-known tattoo shop in LA, and she explains to the artist what she wants. As she explains, it gets even more elaborate with the wings starting to decay the further down her back they went, and the artist shows us some pretty sweet wings he'd done before. He explains how it will be done. He'd do the outline first, and after a few weeks, she could come back and he'd start the detail work. Fast forward to 3 days later, and she's topless lying on his chair/bed, and he's laying a stencil down. He asks her what other tattoos she has besides this one, and she tells him that this will be her first one. Tattoo guy's face drops instantly, and he starts saying how he's going to end up tattooing some of the most painful parts you could tattoo, the ribs mostly. And he asks if she can handle it. She says yes, and after a little more talking, it happened. She cannot take the pain at all. She's crying and gripping the cushion like she's about to die. Artist looks at me and his face reads like, is she really going to do this the entire time? After half an hour of tattooing with the occasional break, he says he can't deal with her screaming in the shop, so he stops. He had probably 10% of the outline done on the right wing. We leave with another appointment set so another person could re-help her with the tattoo and make it something smaller. I didn't go back, but she went with 2 female friends, and from what I heard was another 10 minutes of tattooing, and she had a nice wave outline on her back. I know a girl who tattooed a Wu-Tang W on her upper thigh. Only after she finished and looked in the mirror did she realize that she had done it so that she could see the W, but to everyone else it looks like an M. R/no regrets. During the Twilight craze, a mother brought in her 14-year-old to get vampire bites tattooed on her neck. Little holes with blood streaming down. We refused and they got angry. A few years later, I saw that girl in public. She must have gone to a crappy shop. She had 2 quarter-sized black dots with red strings all the way down her stupid neck. Well, my friend recently got tang, the Chinese word for soup, tattooed on his ankle. He'd been planning it for like 3 years. He reportedly did his research to make sure they didn't tattoo, quote, truth or beauty or some other bullcrap. Honestly, if I had the guts, I would get fried rice tattooed on my arm because I love fried rice. There was an 85-year-old woman who came into my tattoo artist shop saying exactly, "How would a freaking skull with freaking daggers and fire?" My artist said, "Heck yeah!" And now she's an 85-year-old grandma with skull and daggers on her chest. I've had 3 tattooists ask me, "Are you sure?" All because of the same tattoo. Long story short, I lost a bet and ended up with a dingaling on a surfboard tattooed to my butt. Well, it turns out this is a great conversation starter and always gets a giggle from everyone who sees it. But the tattoo itself isn't great, so I'd like to tidy it up and make it look better and less scratchy. Every single tattooist I've asked has looked at me like I'm crazy. One went as far as to tell me a young woman should not have surfing genitalia on her butt. I tattoo eyebrows specifically. I've had a few clients come in and not know it's a tattoo. I had an older woman come in with her paid deposit and think that I was going to wax her eyebrows. She thought the deposit was the price of waxing eyebrows, $110. I felt terrible. I waxed her eyebrows, showed her how to fill them in with a pencil, and then refunded her deposit. Other than that, there's the usual freak out before starting, so I'll always ask, "Are you sure?" I know a girl with a camel tattooed on one of her toes. It's only an outline, and it's hidden most of the time, but I do wonder what motivated her to have a tattoo with the theme of camel toe. Not a tattoo artist, but the last time I got a tattoo, I overheard the guy in the stall next to mine getting a tattoo of 3 spanners along his forearm. His tattoo artist was asking, why spanners? Like, was he a mechanic or an engineer? Nope, dude was a chef. Maybe he wanted to be a mechanic? Or it was a hobby or something? Nope. Dude had always wanted to be a chef and loved his work. Then why the spanners? Turns out, the dude just really likes spanners. Spanner equals wrench, often known as spanner outside of North America. Today I also learned what a wrench was. This has been a very informative topic. She thought that cazzo cancro meant screw cancer in Italian, while it really means dingling cancer. Not a tattoo artist, but my dad has a terrible tattoo on his arm of his and my mom's name. Years ago, she told him to get something around it to make it look a little nicer, and he came back with a dolphin on his pec. She wanted screw it on the inside of her lower lip? I need to know, is that a viable place to put a tattoo? Like, pain notwithstanding, you'd think that having a tattoo on the inside of your lip would be impossible? Like, you're not from Wakanda. That's not gonna work. But I don't know. Tattoo artists of YouTube, let me know in the comments if this is a really, really, really stupid idea. My artist had a drunk guy come in that wanted a raw T-bone steak on one pec. Artist told him no, but guy insisted, so artist finally let him make an appointment to come back in a few days when he was sober and talk about it. Dude actually came back and was still insistent that he wanted the steak. Artist told him, okay, he put together some sample art, and dude would come back the next day, still thinking this guy would change his mind and not show. But dude comes back the next, and he loves the art that artist shows him. Artist figures, why not? And he does it. I saw the photo of the finished tat in his portfolio. It's exactly as described, just a big photorealistic raw T-bone steak, like what you'd buy in a grocery store. This is a Ron Burgundy moment if I've ever heard one. Not an artist, but when I was in high school, a kid got a 7-Eleven Slurpee tattooed on his inner forearm. He showed it to the guy who owned the 7-Eleven nearby, who was so impressed he gave him free Slurpees for life. Hey, let's go! My two best friends got Born to be Wild in black with red flames right above their Johnsons. Now, since they are hardly ever professional snatch punishers, their pubes just mask it. But in college, they would trim and use it as a party trick. It worked. Lots of girls wanted to see it. Maybe like 3 or 4 BJs came from it with the aid of some distilled potato water. But I told the story goes of them getting it done. The two dudes, with cleanly shaven pubes, getting Born to be Wild above their Johnsons. And their artist says, I recommend Bad to the Bone. It's funnier. I worked in a tattoo shop for a few months, learning to be a body piercer. The owner was this gruff older guy. Anyway, this girl walks in and wants a tattoo of a daisy on the top of her foot. It was her first tattoo. The owner tried for a good 10 minutes to talk her out of it, explaining how painful it was to get a tattoo there. She basically told him, shut up and do the tattoo, old man. So he did. She got about a half-inch line done before she screamed and kicked him. She started bawling her eyes out about how bad it hurt. She left with nothing but that half-inch line as a trophy to her own stupidity. Not a tattoo artist. I have a friend who got a tattoo of a nightclub name on his butt. It began with the hashtag, and he gets free entry for life. He's the only guy I know who shows his butt to the bouncers, and instead of getting kicked out, he gets let in free. Oh man, my dad and my stepmom got tattoos the day before they got impulsively married in Vegas. My stepmom, she got his last name tattooed on her inner forearm about 3 inches long. My dad got an enormous, full-body portrait of my stepmother in lingerie. It covers his shoulder and almost all of his upper arm. I was about 13 at that point, and I was livid after they came back and showed us their new ink and their rings. At least they're still married now. Distraught dude came in wanting a portrait. I asked to see the reference photo that he wanted to get tattooed. He showed me a bunch of low-resolution webcam shots of this lady from a dating site. I assumed he was trying to impress some online chick he met, so without telling him that was a horrendous idea, I instead said that it wouldn't work due to the low quality of the pictures and the heavy filters she used. Later learned that the pictures were of his ex-wife from her new dating profile. He was having a really hard time getting over her, so I convinced him that this probably wasn't the best way to get over someone. He ended up booking an appointment to get his son's portraits instead, and then didn't show up for the appointment. So, happy ending? I knew a soldier in my unit who wanted Florida tattooed on his chest, where he was born. Tattoo artist put on the stencil, asked him to check it out. He looked in the mirror and declared it was backwards. The artist began to explain how mirrors work, and he quickly responded with, "Look, I can see it's backwards. Just flip it, idiot." So the artist obliged. When he proudly showed off his new tattoo, the amount of laughter that ensued embarrassed him into wearing t-shirts every second of every day for months. However, he redeemed himself by getting the word cavalry tattooed on his back because, I'm sure you guessed, he was in the cavalry at the time. However, he once again screwed it up by getting the word cavalry tattooed on his back, which is a very subtle but very important difference. Both tattoos were big, bold block letters absolutely impossible to cover. Guy was an idiot in front, behind, forwards, and backwards. My friends called me Banana Man in high school. First sentence in and I'm already regretting typing this. Screw it. I had butt-length blonde hair that I manic-panicked totally yellow. When I'd get high, it was often the scene of me with my hair over my face looking like a banana melting into the couch, hence Banana Man. It also made an easy signature that I unfortunately can't draw here, so it stuck. Fast forward a beat and you have me, in the army, no more butt-length hair, drunk on my first Phase 3 outing. I'm feeling homesick and tired of the bullcrap, a typical moody new army recruit. I stumble into, yes, I was stumbling drunk, a tattoo parlor outside of Fort Lee, Virginia, and ask for a Banana Man tattoo. A lady there says she'll do it. Her excuse is she has fantasy items she wants to tattoo. Last month, she got to tattoo a toaster on someone, and now she gets to mark banana off her list. She draws me up a cartoon of a smiling banana half out of its peel, and my drunk butt loves it. Bam! Before I know it, I'm back at the barracks rubbing ointment on my upper arm. Now I'm in my late 30s and have had to explain this dumb freaking tattoo far more times than I'm comfortable with. I've got a few more tattoos now, and I love them all except this dumb, stupid, drunk purchase that I can't get rid of. At least when you drunk buy crap off of Amazon, you get to return it or throw it away. I'd love to cover it up, but it's that perfect size and shape that all my ideas amount to big black dot on the upper arm. I've even gone to a few tattoo parlors and had artists tell me it's either going to be a big black dot or you're going to see some of it. TLDR, don't get a tattoo if you're drunk. And don't trust an artist who's willing to tattoo you if you are drunk. I remember bleeding a lot. Reddit, what's a secret your job keeps from the public? Olive Garden server, you can get 3 free wine samples every time you go. When we present yours and someone else's profile in front of an employer at the same time, a lot of times, one of you is there to make the other look better. About a quarter of all the gonorrhea we find is in the throat. And a new study suggests transmission from quote-unquote deep kissing. Not necessarily a secret, but it's challenging to get other providers to do testing for all sites at risk. Just a reminder, whenever you go for your routine STD testing, make sure every orifice that's touched a pink part gets swabbed. Worked in a no-kill animal shelter. The thing is, no kill still does mean you have to put animals down sometimes. Especially behavioral issues are terrible. When is a dog too dangerous? Can you rehome a pit bull with a bite history? What if they get too dangerous for staff to handle? Especially when it gets out that we have to put a specific animal down and all those Facebook warriors start rioting and calling you names. It's not like we make those decisions for fun. I work at a cemetery, and I can confirm that the concrete or metal vaults that the casket goes inside of in the ground do not keep the caskets from getting wet. Actually, they do the opposite and just hold water inside. The sales team will always try to paint a nice picture in your head of what the casket/vault combo will look like in the ground, and it's a complete lie. One of many lies in the cemetery and funeral business. We claim to be a leader on the technology front, but we are literally running off of Excel macros with random codes that no one knows how to understand/correct without causing the entire company to crash. A lot of companies, even Fortune 500 companies, are just houses of cards. Shiny on the surface, then you get inside and you realize how much of the organization is dependent on Excel. You learn they're dependent on legacy systems akin to DOS, and you learn that things are constantly breaking, and the only thing keeping the whole company from imploding is people constantly fixing the things that go wrong. I work at a major chemical plant upriver from a major city. If it came out how old, run down, and poorly maintained literally all of the equipment that we use to make sure that hundreds of millions of gallons of contaminated water don't leak or straight up spill into the river, the EPA would shut down every plant on the river. However, the EPA is aware of how inefficient and poorly disposed all our waste products are. The plant I work for has a yearly budget dedicated to paying fines. Your child's school report is probably word for word the same as half of their class. There's only so many ways you can say, works hard but needs to focus on accuracy. At the hospital, they have secret employees who walk around to make sure doctors and nurses sanitize their hands before entering and exiting a patient's room. You'd be surprised how many don't follow protocol and end up getting written up in a day. The chicken bites aren't cooked to order. The fries look darker today not because they're extra crispy, but because the shift manager was too lazy to change the oil, which should be changed every 5 hours. The house sauce is just mayo, ketchup, paprika, and pickle brine. The sticky patch outside the bathroom might be pee. Worked in a library for 2 years. We don't make diddly squat from your book or DVD fines. They're designed to be a deterrent more than anything else. And under the right circumstances, we're very amenable to just making them go away. If you had a tough week and couldn't make it to the library to return your books, we could work something out. Laughing about being too lazy to bring them back / forgetting you had them entirely, yeah, those fines aren't going anywhere. That being said, libraries don't like to penalize people who can't pay their fines. If your kid has so many fines that the computer locks him out so he can't do his homework, we're usually more than happy to help you get logged on for the day. We want to give students the assistance they need, but if a school is the one to test / diagnose a child for autism disorders, then we are the ones that have to pay for all the follow-up medical help. All of our videos are made by the same people in the same building, and we just changed the text / logo. All of the interviews are scripted too. They literally feed the lines to the subjects. Because they don't want to pay us a fair wage or give us benefits, we also don't have to sign anything, meaning no NDA. Dodo / Thrillist / now this. Wow, I literally just got fired. It's not because of this post, I just think the timing is hilarious. We bill by the hour, but no one who works in this industry monitors their time closely. I work in a public library. Sadly, since we're open to all, we get a lot of indigent customers. In this day and age, that means a lot of opiate users, many of whom shoot up in our restrooms. We've had many overdoses, most of which are treated quickly and effectively by administering Narcan. However, that's not always the case, and some people are either beyond saving or are found too late. In 2019 alone, we've had 13 deaths. Security and the EMTs are always careful to make it appear that the body being wheeled out is only ill, so as to not freak out the patrons. The actual number of deaths is even hidden from the staff. I'm friends with a few of the folks in security, which is how I know so much about it. Edit. Obligatory holy crap, I did not expect this to get so much attention. A lot of people have mentioned installing blue lights as a deterrent. That's been looked into and discussed in depth. Unfortunately, what we've discovered is that they're largely ineffectual. When they can't see their veins, they just jab themselves until they hit pay dirt, and all it really does is increase the number of infections and abscesses. The bathrooms are going to be remodeled in the next year to make them less user-friendly, so to speak. Many people have asked where this particular library is. I'm not going to say. However, The fact that people have guessed San Francisco, Philadelphia, Denver, and even Canada illustrates that this is a widespread problem, and that we're sadly far from unique. Thanks to all the other library workers who have shared their stories below, it's unfortunate that libraries are forced to deal with social issues outside the scope of our normal operations, but I maintain that libraries are a foundational pillar of civilization. We now have several full-time trained social workers on staff to help deal with the situation and have effective programs in place to help people get their lives back on track. Most of the time, all it takes for a free upgrade is being polite. My manager will literally ask us, are they being nice? Unless it's the weekend/a show night, then we literally do not have the availability. Yes, even if it's a show that you are not personally interested in going to. For everyone asking what I do, just assume it's like this everywhere, because it usually is. I'm a special education teacher, and the amount of injuries people sustain while working in this field is staggering. I teach high school, and the kids can go until they are 21, so most of the violent students are adult-sized. We get concussions, bites, broken wrists and arms, scalped, as well as inappropriately assaulted by students who will grab you by your breast, pull out their member, and start pleasuring themselves. By the way, I like my job very much and enjoy working with the students. However, there is little public knowledge of how dangerous the position is. We're supposed to be teaching information literacy, but none of us really checks to see if our student sources are legit or not. Edit. A lot of people are commenting about Turnitin. We use SafeAssign. Those are only capable of flagging for plagiarism. What I'm talking about is checking to see if when a student cites a source for a claim, if that source actually said it, and if that source is at all reliable. There's no software for that. The longer I'm in engineering, the more I know that we don't get the design right so much as we just go with the best we have the moment we run out of time or budget. Goodwill has their own landfills for things that don't sell. Things sit on shelves for weeks with continuous price decrease, then one last shot at selling at the outlet stores where everything is priced per pound. Also, I was just saying that because of the title. Don't get me wrong, the programs and community work they do is great. Municipal worker, we do actually work hard and care about the city, and it's hard on us when people stop/call to yell at us without getting all the facts, and we know we can't really defend ourselves. Most of the time, you are reaming out a laborer who has no control over your taxes or which street is getting paved. Fellow city utility guy here, y'all motherfuckers have no clue how hard city workers actually work for you, how many people come in late at night or on holidays to fix shit, or how fast we actually do respond to problems. I'm sorry your crumbled curb in front of your house or whatever didn't get fixed this year, but we literally have 20 people for the entire city, and they are busy making sure you have clean and safe water 24/7, 365. And now for something completely different. If you're polite and it's the end of the day, I will give you free baked goods I made earlier. Delivery driver, we add 10 to 15 minutes on the estimated delivery times so we seem speedy and not seem late if we're stuck in traffic. We also charge delivery fees that most people don't notice or ask about. Yeah, I'm going to share my personal experience with this one. Some of my friends in need needed someone to spot them for delivery, so I would pay for their food. Grubhub is especially bad about this. I once paid double what my friend ordered because of delivery fees alone. In a perfect world where people are actually paid fairly, a $14 sandwich combo should not be $28 because of delivery fees. I used to work for a pesticide company spraying flies on farms. Some of the poisons we used were so strong that 1 pint added to a 500-gallon tank of water and sprayed could knock flies right out of the air immediately and was just as toxic to birds. In fact, we were told if we ever accidentally spilled a bottle of stuff on the ground, we should contact the EPA to clean the mess rather than try to do it ourselves. Ironically, by fall, the flies had developed such a resistance to the poison that the only way it would kill them was if you drowned them in it. Would still kill birds though. One last thing, it was an organic pesticide that could be absorbed through any unprotected skin of the human body. I worked there just 1 year because of this. I don't have a job, but back when I was 12 to 15, I would sometimes help out with the family businesses, which was selling coffee and twisted chips. When we first started, the thing that attracted people was that we would always have baked goods up for grabs, and everyone loved it. The reality was that we all bought it from Costco, put it in different packaging, and played it off as if we made them ourselves. This went on for 2 years within the business. Not my industry anymore, but banks would often make decisions that were probably technically illegal about which houses to repair. I currently work at a drug and alcohol rehab. Alcoholics Anonymous has an abysmal success rate if you measure success by continuous sobriety over a significant period of time. And that is how AA tends to measure it. But because one drink is considered failure, a lot of people drop out of AA out of shame, and it takes them a long time to get sober again, if ever. I've seen people with 20 plus years of sobriety beat themselves up and feel like failures over one night of drinking. Various harm reduction interventions have higher success rates. Harm reduction strategies measure success by drinking/using less often, in smaller quantities, and more responsibly. If you were pretty messed up all last year, but you're sober often enough to show up for work most days this year, that's success. Here's the big shocker. Most problem drinkers and drug users recover on their own without treatment. By recovery, I mean learning how to have a functional relationship with alcohol and drugs. I know a few people in our community that were court-ordered to rehab and/or AA years ago and stopped going as soon as they didn't have to anymore. They aren't 100% sober all the time now, but they go to work every day, they have happy marriages, they take good care of their children, they don't get arrested, and they don't get behind the wheel drunk or high. I'm not saying 12-step programs are worthless. Some do stay sober the rest of their lives and are happy. I think that's success, but it's not the solution for everyone. Unfortunately, rehabs that use different treatment models tend not to receive government funding. Courts tend not to refer defendants to harm reduction. And AA unfortunately perpetuates the myth that permanent sobriety is the only alternative to prison, the madhouse, or death, and that AA is the only place to achieve permanent sobriety. We tell customers that we have a supplier we get our parts from for repairs. Amazon. Our supplier is Amazon. Maybe not the public, but they'd probably be shut down if OSHA or the FDA found out. Current job at an HVAC company. My bosses in the office know that about half their employees, mostly supervisors, are doing drugs. From red-eye to hard drugs. Out on the road, on the roof, wherever. Bosses in the office might be doing drugs, and they even let us know every year about the annual drug test, which I'm pretty sure is supposed to be random. Might not be. Still sketchy with regards to the above. Not like, you guys know what time of year it is, I hope you can pass. More like, the drug test is in 3 months. That's probably enough time to pass if you stop now, without actually saying anything that could implicate them. Also, they don't care if we're safe. They just want the jobs done because they overbook them and need us to move fast. One guy fell off a ladder from 25 feet. He's been doing physical rehab. They refuse to pay workers' comp for him, and they are trying to get him to come back to work when he literally shouldn't be doing anything other than lifting a cup for a drink. I've had multiple times where I want to put my harness and lanyard on because the roof is 30 feet or more from the ground, and my direct supervisor for that week gives me crap and tells me to hurry up because it's a waste of time. Most of the supervisors on the road don't wear the required safety gear when they should. Supervisors don't give a crap either. They just want to move fast so they can keep their numbers up. Guarantee if I got seriously injured, they would ask if I could still work, not call 911 to help me. Edit. I apologize in advance for how long this is. I got hurt today. Nothing major, I think. I had to take 2 6-inch and 12 to 15 feet hoses apart because we were leaving to go home. My supervisor, standing 6 feet away, sees me struggling and doesn't help. They were stuck pretty good. So I got angry. All the crap I dealt with this week ended up in me using all my strength to pull one of the hoses up to free it from the other one. It came up, and the metal end that connected it to the other hose smacked me in the arm, causing a huge bruise and popped a line of blood vessels right below the epidermis, and it started bleeding, but not profusely. This normally wouldn't bother me. I have a decent pain tolerance. Except the bruise is located on the part of my arm above where the tendons to your fingers are. I tore the rest of the setup down with one arm due to me not being able to touch 2 fingers together, let alone grab something. He didn't ask if I was okay or needed help. He just looked at me after I yelled, "Ah, frick!" and walked away and off the roof. Yes, I know this is my fault, not looking for sympathy or anything. Crap happens. Just an update on how crappy these people are on the job. Burger King worker here. The ice cream machine isn't broken. It just needs cleaning, which takes a long time. Cap. Stop the cap. Right now. I know this is anecdotal evidence, but come on. How many times have you gone to a Burger King or McDonald's or wherever, and the ice cream machine is quote-unquote broken every time? I'm advocating for corporate transparency. No, better yet, I'm advocating for ice cream machine solidarity. No ice cream means the world suffers a little bit more because of you, Burger King. Because of you. Lots of professors are winging their lectures, and showing up to office hours really does help your chances of a good grade. A former adjunct can confirm. Although, to be fair, those who do wing it generally know the stuff well enough that it's not an issue. I did it a couple of times for whatever reason, and it always ended up very poorly, so I pretty much always prepped. A lot. And yes, showing up to office hours really does help. The caveat is that you have to show up and show that you care and that you are putting in work. I've had students be surprised that I didn't bump up their grades because, after all, they did go to office hours. Once. At the beginning of the semester. For a very simple question. I've told this story before, but I had a class my freshman year that, honestly, I started skipping. It was early, the class was notoriously difficult, and I was having trouble grasping it. It was divided into 3 parts, 1 test after each third, and then a final overall. And for the first 2, I pretty much never went to class. First third, I didn't give a crap. Second third, I had a surgery on my foot, and it was tough for me to get across campus. After the second test, where I scored somewhere around a 20%, I realized I screwed up big time. I went to her after class and was like, "Look, I screwed up. Is there anything I can do to pass this class?" Needless to say, she was not impressed. She said, "All right, if you come to every, and I mean every class, and every single office hours, you might be able to squeak out a pass." Well, I'll be darned if I didn't go to every office hours, except one that I missed with the flu, on crutches, and worked my butt off to learn a semester's worth of material in a month. When I took the third test, I got the highest grade in the class, just shy of 100. She had mercy on me and let me retake the second test due to the surgery, and I aced that one as well. She told me that she was impressed with how quickly I grasped the material, and out of every student she ever gave that ultimatum to, I was the only one who actually followed through. Going into the final, I calculated that if I scored 100% on it, I could just barely get a B-, which honestly was more than I deserved given the way I ditched class all semester. I passed the final. When I checked my final grade, she gave me an A for the class. That taught me a valuable lesson about putting in the effort and going to office hours. Not at current company, but former one. Everyone had to take additional coursework on business ethics and anti-corruption laws because a subsidiary was found bribing officials to sell the company's products. A clinical trial for Parkinson's failed because of serious adverse events, resulting in at least 3 deaths related to the product. It's now being reformulated and will go through clinical trials again as an arthritis medication. Another clinical trial failed because it was found to be toxic for Asian blood cells. They had originally tried to bypass this by excluding Asians from the trial. Just to be clear, not all pharma companies are like this. There's always a few bad apples. If you get a call from a telemarketing or research call center, you need to specifically ask to be taken off the call list for them to stop calling. Don't be polite and make excuses. Don't mention that you don't have the time. Don't mention the time at all. Don't even just hang up. All of those will often have the company assume on a technicality that you could technically take the call at a later time. Just straight up ask to be taken off their call list or put on their do not call list. You didn't hear this from me. Not my current job, but I used to work as a front desk agent in hotels. Hotels can and do book more rooms than are available. Most systems allow sites like Expedia to book the hotel to 102%. Expedia bookings are the lowest priority. If you don't want to get bumped, book from the hotel's own website. Also, be aware that at midnight, the booking system rolls over to the next day. If you need a room after midnight, call the hotel. If you're a regular customer who doesn't tip your delivery driver, your order is never going to be a priority. I work at a university facilities department. My colleagues actually really do care about the students, student research, and opportunities at uni and beyond for students. This shouldn't be a secret, but I am constantly and consistently impressed by how much our electricians, custodial staff, EHS, you name it, care about the students excelling and achieving. People who have visited the US, what is your WTF America story? First night in Los Angeles, watched as a stolen cop car and a million cop cars flew past me down Hollywood Boulevard at 60 miles per hour at 10 p.m. Then I turned and walked back into the Thai restaurant where I watched the fugitive get PIT maneuvered and shot dead live on the news via helicopter chase cam. Dude sitting next to us was excited to tell us we had officially, quote, experienced LA. Over-the-top car chases, action chase cam news, neon lights in Hollywood, an Asian restaurant that made me feel like I was in an art film. He was right. I've told this story on Reddit before, but my biggest WTF was in fall 2005. Google Earth had just come out, and my colleague at the university lab and I were looking at it. She was a blonde bombshell from San Diego, and I'm a portly Indian boy. When I showed her Mumbai, my home city, she was blown away. You have buildings? Look, there's an airport. Oh my god, you have cars? How the heck do you think we got around? I asked. Her reply still rings on in my head. Not walking, not cows, not elephants, not bicycles, not horse-drawn carts. She said camels. If I ever saw a camel in Mumbai, I'd stop everything I'm doing and say, holy crap, that's a freaking camel! Was at an all-you-can-eat buffet with the soft-serve ice cream machine. As kids, we thought we were being little pigs by swirling as high as we possibly could while our parents weren't looking, or they certainly would have stopped us. The guy after us grabbed a full-size drink tumbler and filled it up with ice cream. No shame at all, no childlike glee at making the mother of all Sundays. I suspect now it was something he did regularly. I'm English and visited California about a decade ago. We'd been staying in a small town called Mariposa while we visited Yosemite National Park for a couple of days. My friends had continued their road trip on to Vegas, while I had to head back down to LA and get the plane home. I was waiting for a bus to the station in Mariposa. It was raining, uncharacteristic for April, I was told. A pickup truck pulls up. The first thing I see is a huge dog sitting in the passenger side. Then an old lady, I'm guessing around 60, peers over and asks me, "Where are you heading?" I told her I was going to LA, and she says, "Me too, get in," and starts pushing the dog into the back. Partly out of politeness, but mostly out of curiosity, I jumped in. I think it was around a 3 to 4 hour drive to LA. As we set off, she starts listing all the things we have to do before we get there. Visit a friend to move a trailer, visit another friend who has broken her ankles to feed her dogs, visit a place where she could do her taxes. Quote, that should only take a few hours. It was going to at least double the journey time. Now, in my head, I was saying, heck no, I don't want to do any of that. But I found myself saying, okay. She was super happy. After about half an hour, we arrived at her friend's house. She had 2 huge dogs, and I found myself carrying an industrial-sized bag of dog pellets to fill a huge automatic feeder. While my new lady friend went to use the bathroom, the slightly larger woman that owned the house showed me photos of her daughter and asked me what I thought of her. I said she was pretty, which wasn't a complete lie. She told me she didn't have a boyfriend, and I nodded and smiled awkwardly. Then she said, "So you're going all the way down to LA with old lady friend, are you?" I saw my chance. Actually, I think it might be better if I get the train. Do you know what the next one is?" Slightly large woman checked the train times. Then she hollered out, "Old lady friend, he needs to get the train. The next one's in 20 minutes. Old lady friend rushes, as fast as a 60-year-old can, back into the room, shows no signs of being perturbed, says we better get going then, and we quickly get in the truck. It looks as though we may miss the train. Old lady friend is literally speeding down the road. She turns to me all of a sudden and says, "Has anyone ever told you about Jesus?" I tell her yes, that my parents have told me all about him. That doesn't put her off giving me a little speech, and I don't say anything to stop her. I just smile and thank her. As we get closer to where the station is supposed to be, she winds down her window at some lights and shouts to a surprised dude on the street, "Where's the station?" before accelerating hard and speeding around the bend in the direction the guy pointed to. We get to the station and there's time to spare. There's a bit of a queue at the ticket booth and I say thanks and take my place in line. After a few minutes, I reach the front and buy my ticket. I turn towards the platform and feel a tap on my shoulder. Old lady friend is standing there, apple in hand, a big smile on her face. She presses the apple into my hands and places her hands around mine. She bends her head in prayer. What she said, I can't remember. I was too busy looking at all the people staring at me, an old lady whose head barely reached my chest holding my hands. Amen. Without another word, she walks away. The train arrives, and I leave. I need a movie made about this now. This is such a good story. When I went to Florida, I was stopped by the police for jaywalking. I protested that the road was clear, so therefore safe to cross. He said, "I don't know how you do it in your country, but here in the US, we take road safety seriously." Aghast, I explained I was from England, and my only knowledge of jaywalking was from Lethal Weapon 3, and I believed that it was just a made-up law that they used in the movie to sass people. He chuckled and said, "That's a great movie. I prefer the first." I agreed and said it was by far the best. After a brief chat about the entire Lethal Weapon saga, he said, "In the future, make sure you use the crossings." I agreed, but asked in a pretty decent South African accent, "What if I have diplomatic immunity?" He chuckled, nodded his head, and pointed to the crossing and said, "Cross there, enjoy your vacation." And off he went. It was the highlight of my holiday. I went to Disneyland in Anaheim, and it just struck me that there were a large number of disabled people out and about enjoying the rides. I'm from India, where there is no shortage of disabled people, but it was just the sheer number of disabled people that made me extremely happy that the park was accessible to everyone. You done good, America, I said to myself as I ate some horrible, expensive fried thing. I later realized that most of those people were not disabled, but fat people on scooters who did not feel like walking. Where do I sign up? According to New Yorkers, my mother and I can't possibly be Portuguese. Apparently, we're Russian, other than incredibly nice and friendly. I loved it. Korean friend who just got off the plane in Atlanta. So many big fat black women! Yes, he said it loudly and in public. But my favorite was a Japanese fellow who went to a buffet with a group of friends in Vegas. He sits down and his plate looks like a normal little meal. We all have heaps of crap all over ours, and his eyes bug out that we have so much food. I said he's really going to freak out when he realizes this is only our first plate. A couple. I went to university at Cal State Fresno. I was a country boy from Canada. When I was there, the entire downtown of Fresno was boarded up and you did not go there after dark. Actually, anytime. And a full-blown gun/gang fight outside of my apartment, in Clovis, a suburb near the university. For a kid from small-town Canada, that was mind-blowing. When I first moved to America, one of the first things I saw after leaving JFK was a homeless man pleasuring himself outside of Union Station. It wouldn't have been that strange, except I had heard a lot of things about New York City from people who had been there, or knew someone, etc., and I was worried what I was seeing was just going to be an everyday, everywhere thing all throughout the country. I saw 50 chicken nuggets for $5. There was a place called Norma's in Washington State, somewhere rural. Anyway, it was like a shrine to George Bush. The owner was a guy, and the back of the menu had his face with the quote, "Just call me Norma" on the back. Best burger I ever had, called the George W. Bush burger. Not my story, but my mom's. And instead of visiting, it was more like a people who have immigrated to the US, what is your WTF America story? So, it's the early 1980s, and my mom's plane touches down in LAX from Tokyo. As she was collecting her luggage and waiting for her friend to pick her up, a Hare Krishna, which she had never seen before, came up to her and asks her, in English, if she could donate a few dollars. My mom, who only had a few yen and a poor grasp of English, tried to explain to the Hare Krishna that she couldn't understand him and that she had just arrived in the United States. The moment she started talking to him in Japanese, he just gave her some of the money he had and went on his merry way, leaving her at the luggage carousel confused as heck. I asked an old lady if it's true all Americans carry guns. She smiled and pulled a revolver out of her purse. She was a nice lady. I was 12 years old when I spent a month in Minnesota. I remember going WTF, or at least a French equivalent, when we went to Mall of America and I saw the freaking roller coaster inside of it. Edit. I'm not Canadian. I come from the old continent. Back home we would say something like, Putain! Yes, it means unfaithful woman. But I wasn't using curse words when I was 12, so I probably shouted, oh la vache, holy cow. Minnesota is awesome when you're 12. Now that I'm all grown up, I'd like to go to LA or New York City, but nothing beats fishing and horseback riding when you're a preteen. Canadian on tour in America witnessed an enormous man at a Big Boy in Wisconsin pull out 5 jumbo freezer bags and fill them to the brim with sausages from the all-you-can-eat buffet. He hid every bag between the overhang of his belly and sweatpants, then filled a full plate of sausages and proceeded to sit calmly at his table and finish them. Canadian was in a gas station waiting to pay before prepaid took over, and a couple of guys with handguns and holsters were in line in front of me, resting their hands on the guns. Not so much WTF, I knew to expect it, but it's a memory I think of often. Edit. I know nothing about guns or the proper terminology, but I have lots of questions about the exact posture in my inbox, so I'll try to clarify without angering more people. It wasn't a threatening, I'm about to draw my gun pose. It was more of a, this is just a comfy resting place for my hands pose. Like when you hook your thumb on your belt and let it hang there, except near your gun. Anyway, my original point wasn't that I thought they were going to draw. I was just shocked seeing a couple of guns like that. It had never happened before. Me paying at a gas station. Attendant hears I have an accent, smiles at me. You speak English so well. Thanks. Although I should do. I'm from England. Cue confused look. Wait, they... She trailed off. Speak English there? Her colleague stared at her in open-mouthed disbelief and then broke out laughing with the other customers. She looked mortified. To be fair, I felt terrible for her. She was only trying to be friendly to a foreigner. I'm from America, and I have a friend from Australia. It amazes him that there are so many flags everywhere. Apparently, that is a distinct USA thing. He'll make jokes about how we all forget where we are. Was in northern New York, near Buffalo, and a waitress overheard that I was headed back to the Pacific Ocean. She asked where I was going, and I said Vancouver. No, honey. Vancouver is in Canada, and that is on the Atlantic Ocean. I said, Canada is from sea to sea, just like America. She replied, no, that's not right. Only America is from sea to sea. The combination of her being absolutely sure about something and her total ignorance was surprising enough, but the fact that she felt she could basically interrupt our conversation by telling me I am wrong about what ocean I live beside was weird. French ex-exchange teenager in Cali here, summer 97. I was young and missed the field trip bus to Disneyland from San Diego, so I did something pretty stupid. I hitchhiked to go there by myself. Dude who took me looked like a plaincloth cop, but a good buddy. When he heard I was French, he told me to never ever hitchhike in USA because it's pretty dangerous. Plus, people could assume I'm a serial killer. So I boasted, look at you don't think I'm a serial killer. I'm not that dangerous looking, or you're a careless. He told me to open the glove box in front of me. There was a supposedly loaded, freaking Desert Eagle inside. He dropped me at the bus station and insisted to give me $10 for a ticket. I had cash, and waited for me to go in the bus. TLDR, still don't know if plaincloth angel or Zodiac killer. Do you have cell phones in Norway? This was in 2012. Kids nowadays get an iPhone and or iPad before they're born. I'm Canadian, and I went down to the US to do a little shopping. I accidentally pulled out some Canadian bills, and the cashier asked why I kept Monopoly money in my wallet. Edit, a lot of people are saying it was just sarcasm. I don't think it was. The cashier looked around 16 years old. She had probably never seen Canadian money before. When I started awkwardly chuckling, she had a puzzled look on her face. But who knows? Maybe she was just really invested in a joke. After moving from Africa as a teen, I am repeatedly asked why I moved to Africa in the first place, to which I replied that I've always lived there. I am also asked, so why are you white? To which I reply, oh my god, Karen, you can't just ask people why they're white. However, when they reply with blank stares, I realize they aren't referencing Mean Girls. Some other questions. So, Africa is one country and all the borderlines are, like, states? Are there, buildings? You guys have memes over there, right? Are you Australian? Australian here. I went to Houston last year and spoke to a girl my age in the airport. We got chatting about uni/college. It was around July, and she asked me if I was on my summer vacation. I casually explained I was on my winter break. She was genuinely confused and did not understand how it was summer in the US but winter in Australia. I tried to explain, but eventually gave up. This next one has layers. I was complimented on my excellent English by a girl from Ohio. I'm Canadian. She thought we all spoke German. Canada, the country best known for speaking German. Not that there's already a country whose language is named after the country it originates from. When I started chatting to a cashier, she squealed and asked where I was from. I told her Australia, and she instantly dumbed down how she spoke. Do y'all speak English down there? I replied sporadically. She laughed and informed me that wasn't a word. When I went to the US the first time and ordered a meal from Burger King, ordering a large fry, Coke, and a Whopper, I was blown away by the size of it all. Each item was larger than the same item back home. I was already like WTF, but then the cashier said I could have a second Whopper for $1. Again, I was like, what the heck? Sign me up! Another time, while I was in Daytona, I went to a restaurant and the woman kept refilling my drink again and again. Being a bit shy, I didn't tell her to stop and expected a bill with $15 for sodas, but then I found out the refills were free. What the heck? Free refills? I'd only seen that at places like Subway, but so many restaurants in the US had free refills. I love the US for restaurants and food in general. The portions are massive and very reasonably priced. Went to Walmart. The fabled creatures there are just as the internet portrays them as, nonetheless still mind-blowing. With all the Australian replies in this thread, I can only imagine someone dressed like Steve Irwin running around a Walmart, squatting down in front of the average shopper and exclaiming, "Whoa, now there's a beauty! Overweightus americanus, known for their impulsive spending habits. These babies can grow up to 158 kilos!" How spread out everything is. Like, it's pretty much impossible for me to survive without a car, while everywhere I needed to go on a regular basis back in London was in a 10-minute biking distance. Also, the number of pickup trucks people own without needing. It has come to my attention that the city I live in, Jacksonville, Florida, is the widest city in the 48 contiguous states of the US, with a population of just under 1 million. That explains a lot. Not gonna lie, I personally hate needing a vehicle to navigate a city. Like, what's the point of having everything in one spot if you're just going to have to drive to it anyway? It defeats the purpose entirely. Any contractors or civil engineers willing to answer this question in the comments? Let me know. Not mine, but someone posted a while back about his British boss getting pulled over for speeding. As is the tradition in England, he got out of the car to meet the police officer, and it went about as well as you'd expect. Went to a club the other day and got frisked by a door guy wearing a bulletproof vest. That was interesting. Every single one of you jerks asked me where in England I was from. I'm from Australia! Pretty much as far away from England as you can get without leaving the planet! A universal WTF for both foreign and US citizens? The Golden Corral. Everything was submerged in liquid butter. The patrons were larger than some cars. I'd never been out of Australia before. In Australia, only farmers and cops have guns, and some criminals, I guess. So I had never seen a gun that wasn't in a cop's holster in my entire 30-year existence. We go to the US for our honeymoon and have the honor and privilege of visiting a Walmart. The guns are just on the shelf. You can touch them. A fellow Aussie friend who was with us at the time asked the cashier if she could hold one. He looked at her as if she had asked if it was okay to breathe the store's air. "Can I hold one? This big one?" she asked, incredulous. "Sure, if you want to," the guy said, confused and bored at the same time. She picked up this huge gun. Sorry, not a gun guy. Don't know what it was. It was about the size of a shotgun, but was bulkier, and was getting us to take photos of her with it. If I had a gun like that at home and walked outside my house with it, someone would drive past and see me in about 10 seconds. They would call the cops, which would take about 30 seconds. The police station is just up the road, so I estimate a cop car would arrive in about 3 minutes. And it would take about 10 seconds for a cop to ask me politely to jump in his car and come for a nice chat down to the police station. But it'll be fun for about 4 minutes. That thing is $10. That's good. I have a $10 note. I can buy that thing. Oh, wait. I went to Applebee's. Mistake number 1, I guess. I was then served by a nice young lady called Brittany who asked me with a serious face if we have trees in Scotland. I'm from the UK. Lived in the US for about 5 years now. Few things that annoy me. You want to get a loan for a new car? There's a fee for that, on top of the interest. You want to take money out of the ATM? There's a fee for that. You want to exchange some currency? There's a fee for that, on top of the exchange spread. A product has money off? You'll have to send something to receive it. They hope you can't be bothered. Pretty much any service, someone will try to make a few extra dollars off you. Was in Spokane at Silverwood, amusement park, and asked where the washroom was. I was promptly told there were no washrooms in the park. This happened a good handful of times, and it never even occurred to me that I had to say restroom to receive any real help. I'm Canadian and have visited the United States multiple times, and have had an overall enjoyable experience on each one. I wouldn't blame this on America, but I saw a fat, bald, middle-aged man standing on the side of a Pennsylvania highway with bunny ears. I'm sure this happens in Canada too, but this is the first time I've seen something like this. Easter Bunny has had a rough few years. People just don't care about Jesus coming back anymore. What's your most accidental, awesome moment? So, in my first years in high school, there was this bully that always picked on me, pushing me around, swearing, and other bullying stuff. Me being the bespectacled little geek and him being taller and bulkier, I just tried to get out of his way and avoid him. So in our second year, our school went for a field trip in some village/farm area. As soon as we were far from teachers, this bully shows up, pushes me around, and hits me. I was fuming because he spoiled my trip, but didn't do anything and he left. A few hours later, I was having lunch up on a small hill that was overlooking a small amateur soccer field. And there was the bully, back to me, 20 meters away, playing as goalkeeper. Geek rage flares up. I have this apple with me, so I pick it up and throw it with all my might towards him. It hit him, straight on the shoulder blade. Now my added height and distance must have added to the force of impact because he got knocked down hard. He lay there for a good 5 minutes, got up, turned around, looked at me, and started walking slowly towards me. I was thinking, oh crap, he's gonna kill me. But I had the geek rage still flaring, so I stood defiantly and waited, ready to fight back this time. He reaches me and goes, "What was that?"
"An apple."
Listen, man, I don't want any trouble. I was dumbfounded. He never bothered me again after that. Even became a bit friendly. TLDR, I neutralized a bully with geek rage and an apple. I was sitting on a patio with friends, and a friend who was absolutely terrified of roaches started screaming and running around because a roach appeared on the top of the patio about 25 feet away from me. As a joke, I casually stood up, whipped out my pocket knife, and while talking, I threw it. It went spinning through the air and stuck the roach to the wood. I sat back down and finished what I was saying while everyone was in disbelief. We all had a good laugh, and they nicknamed me Crocodile Dundee. I catch rattlesnakes for a living in Phoenix, Arizona as an emergency response service for people who find a snake in their yard. Most calls are diamondbacks, but 1 in 4 or so, quote, rattlesnakes end up being a large constrictor called a gopher snake. Gopher snakes can be aggressive, but they're otherwise harmless. On one call, there was a kid of about 15 who was absolutely terrified of a rattlesnake he saw along the back wall of his yard, behind the swimming pool. The only way to really get there was to tightrope it across the narrow ledge of the pool. I got there and saw that it wasn't a rattlesnake at all, but a harmless gopher snake. So I reached down and grabbed the 5-foot snake. It was a jerk about the whole thing, striking at my face repeatedly and getting me on the forearm. I grabbed it closer to the head and wrestled it into control as I made my way back across the ledge to the bucket, where I unwrapped him from my arm and body and put it in the bucket. I then realized I forgot to tell the kid that it wasn't a rattlesnake before doing that. I looked up and he looked like he was going to vomit/pass out. Probably the palest I've ever seen a living person. He surely believed he was about to see a man die. I now routinely, quote, forget to tell homeowners that it's just a gopher snake. About 15 years ago, my ex-wife and I were at a party sitting across from each other at a fairly large table. We were surrounded by dozens of friends. Some sitting, some standing and chatting in the kitchen. She had my Zippo and I wanted to smoke, so I asked her to toss it to me. She tossed the Zippo to me across the table. The lid pops open in midair. Somehow, I hit the roller with my thumb as I catch it, and the thing lights up as it hits my hand. My arm is fully outstretched when I catch it, so I smoothly pulled my arm in, lit the cigarette in my mouth, snapped the Zippo shut with a flick of my wrist, and tossed it back to her with one fluid motion. Half the people at the table jump up in amazement and begged us over and over again to perform the trick one more time. We refused. I never told a soul that the whole event was completely accidental. My friends still talk about it with awe. Not nearly as awesome as yours. I was with my girlfriend at a party and she had this crazy look in her eye from across the table. I could tell she was going to spit a Skittle at me. I didn't know how I knew. She launched it across the long table and I caught it in my mouth. Nobody noticed. For this next one, as I describe this, I just want you to imagine Ave Maria playing in your head. I was at a college football game for MSU in Missouri. I was up in the nosebleeds after our marching band had played in the homecoming parade earlier that day. I left to go get concessions and started walking down the stairs. I tripped suddenly and began tumbling over and over, down, down, down. Over stairs, across landings, flailing hopelessly for purchase on one of the handrails or an onlooker's appendage, but with no avail. It seemed to never end. I eventually reached the bottom, where the landing divided left and right to lead the mezzanine, which meant there was a bit of concrete and a handrail directly in front of me. I hit the handrail with my lower back, almost fully upside down, and still locked in the kinetic tour de force of my fall. I rocked over the handrail with my lumbar as my fulcrum. dropped the meter or so to the ground, and landed feet first in such a state of confusion that I just started walking as if nothing had happened. The whole section erupted in cheers, to the point it made people on the field look up at us. TLDR, I took an epic fall down a crap ton of stairs in front of thousands, landed on my feet, and everyone thought it was on purpose. When I was about 11 years old, I got chased by two vicious, hungry-looking Dobermans in a car yard. Realized I wasn't going to get away, so I turned around, put my war face on, and bolted straight at them, shouting like I was possessed and intending to tear their freaking snouts off. Dogs disappeared with their tails between their legs. I felt like a big man. Now let me see your war face! Ah! I worked at a Boy Scout camp years and years ago. One of the activities I was in charge of was building a log cabin. Part of building the log cabin is to strip all the bark off the wood to help keep the logs from rotting. The Scouts generally had a love-hate relationship with this step of the project. On the plus side, they got to use sharp objects. On the minus side, it was hard manual labor. While they were using bark strippers, I was using a chisel to get the bark off around knots. Normally, using a chisel on wood is not a hazardous operation as long as the blade is facing away from you. One day, I was not doing well on my safety observance. I was trying to jam a stubborn piece of bark off the wood with the blade facing toward my arm. The wood broke against the force. The blade kept on trucking through the bark and into my wrist. At this point, the Scouts knew something was wrong as they saw me curse, drop the chisel, and grab my arm. I was the only adult present, so I was fighting to keep my calm as to not panic the Scouts. My solution was to turn it into a first aid lesson. I told a couple of Scouts to get the first aid kit and the others to help me over the picnic bench. I told them they were going to have an impromptu first aid lesson on severe bleeding and shock with the victim as their instructor. The Scouts were able to keep their heads together and get the health officer out to our location to treat me the rest of the way. They said it was the best first aid class they ever had. Oh, maybe junior year of high school. I used to stay after school to avoid going home. Some girl 1 year below me came up to me with her friends, acting flirty. Her girlfriend and 3 guys walked away. I did not think much of it at the time. Fast forward about 30 minutes, and the girl that I was talking to said that she was worried about her friend and why she was still gone. She said that her friend went in the auditorium and asked if I would see if she is still there. I walk into the auditorium and all the lights are off except for the band pit. I make my way down there and hear a girl say, "No, let go." I flipped a bit and mustered up a yell while charging the band pit. 3 guys take off, followed by the girls. About a month later, my dean walks into my classroom and says that she needs to escort me to the principal's office. Mind you, my school was huge, so while walking to the other building where the principal's office was located, I asked if this was about my skipping gym class a bunch of times. She said no, but whatever it was about must be really big to warrant her escorting me to the principal. We get to the office and I see 2 cops and the 2 girls that I met a month before. Freaking the heck out, I sit down and the cops say, "Thank you." What? I was asked some questions and was informed that the 3 guys were attempting to force themselves upon the girl. I guess I stumbled in at the right time. I had not spoken to my father for months at this time in my life, but received a call from him that night. The school called to tell him what I had done. My pops told me I was his hero. That was a good day. Once in middle school, my locker was next to some hot chicks. I noticed one of her books started slipping from the top shelf, so I put my hand out to stop it. It started actually falling, so I was like, crap, and awkwardly tried to stop it. It landed perfectly in my hand. The binding went straight into my palm, without me even looking, and I ninja'd it right back into the shelf. I was Peter Parker for 30 seconds. I was going to college in Chicago and left a bar near Wrigley Field with a beer bottle in my hand. While walking to the L, 2 guys confront me on the street wanting to rob me. I was stunned and accidentally hit the bottle on a brick building, shattering the bottom. The 2 guys thought I was going to defend myself with the broken bottle and ran. Stopped to get gas at an old country store gas station outside Camden, South Carolina. Apparently, one of the door hinges was broken, so when I opened the door, the entire door came off in my hands. There were 5 or 6 farmers, truckers in line at the cashier. One of the fellas said, "Dang, I'd feel pretty good for the rest of the day if I were you." Here's another story. When I was in grade 10, I had this real jerk of a computer science teacher. Like, the type that would rather make fun or condescend you to make himself feel better or something instead of helping you. One day, we were making programs to output certain properties of a sphere/circle after inputting a radius value. I remember asking him what's the surface area of a sphere or something to that effect. I mean, I don't think that was an unreasonable question. I'm in frickin' 10th grade for frick's sake. He decided to take this opportunity to humiliate me. So anyway, this is how the convo went. The surface area of a sphere is 4 pi r squared, right, sir? Did you just ask me the surface area of a sphere? Yeah? Well, maybe we should call your math teacher and find out. Walks over to phone, dials math teacher. Hey, your student X would like to ask you a question. I walk over to phone with everyone in class watching me. Yeah, Mr. Computer Science teacher doesn't know the surface area of a sphere, and he's too embarrassed to ask you himself. His face turned super red and the whole class cracked up. I felt so epic that week. Me and my then 3-year-old son went to the playground. This bigger kid arrived and started going around scaring the crap out of the smaller kids by popping out and roaring and hissing and whatnot right in their face. I saw what car came in and that his mom was sitting in it still, maybe just waiting for him to finish quote-unquote playing. Anyway, he proceeds to do his scare thing to my son, who of course freaks out and runs to me crying. I started fuming, thinking it's his own parent's responsibility to tell him to cut that crap out. I decided to go tell his mom. I ask, "Is that your son over there?" She says yes, and I tell her what he's doing, and either you get him to stop or I'll do it for you. To my surprise, she says, "Oh, please do. I can't control him today." So I go back over and try my best to hide right where he is roaming. And as soon as he's within striking distance, I pop out, and with all the air in my lungs, I scream at the top of my lungs 1 inch from his face. He ran back to his car, absolutely terrified and crying. I could see his mom. She didn't come out or do a thing. To this day, if anyone messes with my son who's bigger than him, he screams nonsensically in their face. Crazy beats size any day. Was in a restaurant with my girlfriend at the time, and when a guy built like a refrigerator just comes barging through and knocks my girlfriend's drink all over her. Sorry, real quick, I just need to mention that I could not tell you how many times I cracked up over the phrase built like a refrigerator. Like, that's such a specific thing to say, and it just murdered me every time I tried to read it. It was clearly an accident based on his refrigerator-like physique and being unable to hold his arms at his side. At this point, I'm standing up to help clean her up and figure he's going to apologize or something. Instead, he pushes my shoulder and tells me to get out of the way and, quote, let the dog clean herself up. I stare at him and say, "That dog is my girlfriend. You dang well better apologize to her." So the woman and man at the table next to us are notably getting nervous. She drops her menu off the table. By some fluke, I catch the menu flat along the top of my foot before it hits the ground and proceed to just raise my foot, keeping the menu on top of it. I grab the menu into my hand, all the while glaring into this guy's eyes. I just tell her, "Sorry, ma'am, you seem to have dropped this." I just look at him and say, "So, I think we left it off where you were going to apologize to my girlfriend for being so rude and then walking around." Much to my surprise, he turned to my girlfriend and said, "I'm terribly sorry," and then turned around and walked away. Our check was taken care of as well. I've caught light things like pieces of paper on top of my foot, but never something like a menu. And I was always terrible at hacky sack. I was 19 and at a house party near the university in my hometown. It was winter and my girlfriend and I were wearing scarves she had just knitted. They were her first knitting projects and she was super proud of them. I was super proud too. Anyway, there were a group of snarky jocks sitting on the steps and on the railing of the porch. We were returning from a beer run, and as I approached the door, one of the jocks on the railing says to me, "Nice scarf, gay boy," and all his buddies laugh. I stood there with the door in my hand for a second and looked at my visibly hurt girlfriend. It made me furious that he mocked her amazing creation and gift, so I slammed the door and started towards them to tell them how actually freaking awesome my scarf was. He must have thought I was in fight mode because he flinched, lost balance, tried to correct himself, and comically fell backwards off the porch to the delight of both his and my friends. I opened the door for my beaming girlfriend and we went inside. Best part is, no one knew all I was going to do was get all sentimental on his butt and open up a can of polite confrontation all over him. TLDR, guy smack-talked my woman's yarn crafts and now he's on his back. TLDR, accidental front flip on a snowboard. I'm a little late to the game, but here it goes. I used to work at a ski resort in Pennsylvania, so I'd be out riding in all kinds of crazy conditions. One particular day, the snow was really granulated to the point where you could get stuck in it. I was riding down a steep slope going quite fast and hit a pile of granulated snow that almost brought me to a complete stop. My reflexes told me to lean forward and tuck, so instead of a devastating fall, I was picked up off the ground by my momentum and did a front flip on my board, landing perfectly and riding away. I think 1 or 2 other instructors saw it. I was about 17 when I was walking with my younger brother and 2 of his friends. They were all about 12. A car, full of people, passes and yells at us and flips us off. I knew who it was, so I flipped them off and yelled, "Screw you!" back at them. We continued along and cut through an empty parking lot enclosed by trees to take a shortcut to our destination. The car I flipped off comes flying into the parking lot, people screaming, tires squealing. My little brother and his friends are scared crapless. I walk over to the car laughing because of the way the younger kids with me were acting, and was going to give my friends in the car a good laugh. When I get to the car, I stick my head dang near in the driver's window, still laughing, and realized I had no idea who any of these people were. My laughing face turned to a morbid, "I'm about to get my butt kicked" face, which the people in the car must have interpreted as maniacal laughter turning into a death stare. It scared the crap out of them, and I recall hearing passengers screaming at the driver to get the heck out of there. "He's going to kill us!" The car peeled away, and I walked back to rejoin my brother and his friends, and they all thought I was the coolest, most awesome older teen they'd ever met. About 5 years ago, there was a crazy huge bee in my house, and my brother, terrified of bees, came running to me, wanting me to kill it for him. I picked up my crappy toy airsoft pistol, which was loaded with 1 pellet, pointed the pistol at the bee from about 40 feet away, didn't aim at all, pulled the trigger, and saw a splat on the other side of the room. TLDR, unassisted triple play. I hate baseball. No offense. My mom made me play in the park league a few seasons anyways. So I was at second base in a coach pitch game, about 8 years old, when the batter hit a ball that would have passed right by me at shoulder level. I just casually stuck on my glove and to my surprise caught the ball. I was already stepping on the base, so the runner heading towards third was instantly out. By this time, the runner from first was approaching. "Tag him!" my coach was screaming frantically. So I reached out and tapped the runner from first. I remember everyone, especially the coach, going wild. They even dated the ball and gave it to me. I didn't realize until years later how rare an unassisted triple play is. This happened in my skydiving years. It was a Saturday morning. There was a group of girls from the nearby college wanting to jump. So the daring, including myself, wanted to do a hop and pop to show the girls what skydiving looks like. We get to altitude, jump, deploy our chutes, and start to show off our crazy canopy skills. I decide that I'll do a hook turn. They look cool from the ground, and my canopy colors were blue and pink. Well, after some tugs on my toggles, my hook turn collapses my canopy. It turns into a low hook turn. Low hook turns usually end up with a visit to the hospital or the morgue, usually the latter. With my canopy folded over, I'm doing revolutions. My altitude is too low to cut away and use my reserve, so I think to myself that, this is it. I hope this doesn't hurt too bad. I hope I can walk away. On the bright side, my lines didn't wrap around the canopy, so there is a possibility that I could pull it out before impact. From the people on the ground, all they saw were some skydivers coming in for a landing, swinging like a pendulum, and some of them coming in to kick this inflatable target we had at our DZ. They could tell that something wasn't right with one of the divers, me, because his chute wasn't open and he was spinning parallel to the ground. The most important thing to do in skydiving is to make everything you do look cool. With 100 feet to go before impact, I pump my toggles, release, and my canopy unfurls and inflates as if the hands of God raked his fingers through my lines and pulled my canopy tight. This put my body position perpendicular with no inches to spare for a walk-in landing. The crowd applauds with oohs and ahs, including the experienced divers who knew what was happening. I bow, gather my stuff, and go in the clubhouse to calm my nerves. My buddies told the students he does that all the time, and they knew I was shaken. I met my old dive buddies a few months ago. We live in different states now, and they brought up that experience as one of the craziest things they have ever seen. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, linked at the top of the description. And if you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot, linked in the description too. Either way, thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.